There's a story I've been keeping close to my heart. The kind of story that drifts like a feather in the night. It is a story of friendship, of silence, and of goodbyes that never truly end. And before we wander into it together, I want you to know something. We truly care about you more than you realize. You are not alone here. You are safe, you are loved, and you belong. Before we begin the story, tell us, where in the world are you watching from and what time is it there? Now grab your coffee, settle back, and let's begin. Birdperson's story begins in silence. Not the silence of emptiness, but the hush of a world before dawn, when the air holds its breath, when even the stars seem reluctant to blink. He was not born into trumpets or thunder. He was born under a sky the color of soft ash, where winds curled gently around jagged cliffs and pale grasses whispered across an endless plain. His first sound was not a cry, but a long, wavering note, something between a hum and a sigh, as though even at birth he was more song than speech. The elders who tended him said they had never seen a child so solemn. His eyes were vast, unblinking, as though he already knew the weight of skies. He did not flail or fuss. He simply looked at the world, at the trembling grass, at the shifting shadows, at the feathers that drifted from nests above. And he watched. Some whispered that such quietness was strange, even unnatural, but others, the gentler ones, thought it beautiful. "This one," they said softly, "will not live loudly. He will live deeply." In those early days, his world was small. A nest of woven reeds, a mother's warmth like the hush of a low lullaby, the rustle of wings above him, the faint glow of starlight dripping through clouds. These became his first teachers, not words, not lessons, but the slow rhythm of nature itself. He grew not in leaps, but in pauses. Every sound, every movement lingered in him like ripples across still water. When he was strong enough to toddle, he would follow the wind as though it were a friend. His wings were small, clumsy, more like ornaments than tools, but he spread them anyway. He would stumble across the soft dirt, arms and feathers flaring, trying to catch the invisible air. Often he fell, but he never wept. Instead, he would sit in the dust, tilt his head and listen, as though the earth itself had whispered something only he could hear. It was this patience that set him apart. The other young ones were loud, brash, eager to test their wings against the cliffs. They laughed when he lagged behind. Yet he never seemed to mind. Instead of chasing, he lingered. He noticed the way shadows lengthened on rocks at dusk. He traced the patterns of fallen feathers, arranging them into circles, spirals, shapes only he understood. Sometimes, when the air was still, he would hum to himself, low, steady tones that carried farther than any child's shout. His mother once told him that his voice reminded her of the winds before rain. The first time he managed to lift himself from the earth, it was not a moment of triumph, but of quiet awe. He had wandered alone to the edge of a high ridge, his feathers tugged gently by the evening air. He spread his arms, not to show off, not to prove anything, but simply to feel. The wind curled beneath him, lifted him just enough that the ground no longer pressed against his feet. He hovered for a heartbeat, then two, and then slowly he sank back down. To others, it was nothing. A flutter, a stumble, hardly worth notice. But to him it was everything. He did not shout. He did not rush home to announce it. He only closed his eyes, let the memory settle deep inside, and whispered to himself, "The sky knows me now." From that day, his bond with the sky grew. Each attempt was not a contest, but a conversation. Sometimes the sky lifted him. Sometimes it refused. He accepted both with equal grace. He learned that flight was not about force or will, it was about listening to the air, to the silence between gusts, to the weight of his own body. This was Birdperson's first lesson, though he would not name it until much later, that life, like flight, is less about conquering and more about yielding. At night, he would lie awake and watch the stars. They seemed to him like feathers scattered across an endless black wing. He imagined that somewhere, long ago, a great bird had soared across the heavens and left its plumage behind. The thought comforted him. If stars were feathers, then perhaps he too would one day leave behind a trail of brightness. Not loud, not burning, but steady, a quiet reminder that he had been here. There were whispers among the elders about destiny. They said that children born in silence often carried burdens, that the sky marked them for strange paths. He never asked what those paths might be. He only listened, the way he always did, and tucked the words away, not as prophecy but as music, the faint background hum of his life. As he grew, so too did his solitude. He was not unfriendly, but he seemed apart, as though he lived one step to the side of everyone else. When others played, he lingered at the edges, observing. When others spoke, he listened longer than he replied. And yet, those who spent time with him felt an odd comfort. His silence was never cold. It was soft, like a blanket wrapped gently around the noise of the world. Children who had nightmares sometimes crept to his side, knowing he would not tease them. He would simply sit, hum low, and let the fear drain away. Looking back now, it seems clear, even in his earliest days, Birdperson carried the shape of who he would become. A figure of stillness in a storm of restless voices. A soul who spoke less with words and more with presence. And though he could not know it, though none of them could, the quiet beginning of his life would echo across the years. Through friendships, betrayals, and long silences yet to come. For now, though, he was only a boy with clumsy wings, a boy who believed the stars were feathers, and that if he waited long enough, the sky itself would teach him to fly. And so it began, not with a shout, not with a battle, not with a sudden burst of light, but with a hush, with a whisper, with the soft beginning of a song that had not yet found its end. There are moments in every life when something small becomes everything. Not because it changes the world, but because it changes the way we feel inside our own skin. For Birdperson, that moment came not with fanfare, but with the gentle lift of air beneath his wings. It began on a morning heavy with mist. The grass was wet with dew, and the horizon was blurred, as though the earth itself still lingered in a dream. He was older now, his wings stronger, but still he treated them with quiet reverence. Where the other young ones rushed to leap from cliffs, shouting and daring each other to fall farther, Birdperson walked alone to a low ridge. He did not want to prove anything, he only wanted to listen. He stood there for a long time, eyes closed, feeling the patterns of the wind against his feathers. A gust from the east, a lull, a steady push from the north. He tilted his head slightly, adjusting, waiting. His patience was unusual for one so young, but that was always his way. He seemed to know that flight was not a trick to be conquered. It was a conversation, and conversations required listening as much as speaking. When the wind finally aligned, soft, steady, carrying the scent of the sea from far away, he spread his arms. The mist curled around him like smoke, clinging to his feathers, blurring the line between body and sky. He bent his knees, not in tension but in readiness, and stepped forward. The first lift was subtle, barely enough to raise him from the ridge, only enough to pull the weight from his toes, but it was enough. He felt the air cradle him, as though invisible hands had caught him mid-fall. He gasped, not in fear, but in wonder. And then, gently, the ground released him. For a heartbeat, he hovered. The mist swirled around his wings and the ridge fell away beneath his feet. The sky seemed to lean closer, whispering its approval, and then, just as gently, he sank back down, landing with a softness that left the grass unbent. Most children would have shouted, run home, demanded recognition, but Birdperson only bowed his head, letting the memory root deep inside. He did not need applause. The sky had noticed him. That was enough. From that day onward he returned to the ridges again and again. Sometimes he lifted, sometimes he fell. He never grew frustrated. Each attempt was part of the same quiet dialogue, and he cherished it. When he stumbled, he listened harder. When he rose, he gave thanks in silence. Slowly, his balance sharpened. His wings grew steadier. The air began to trust him, and he began to trust it in return. One evening, when the sky blazed gold with the last fire of day, he found himself higher than ever before. The wind carried him not just above the ridge, but out into the open. The ground fell away in a blur of shadows and color. For the first time, he was not bound by the earth. For the first time, he was held entirely by the sky. He spread his wings wide, steadying himself, and felt something shift inside him. A stillness deeper than silence, a calm older than words. In that moment, he was no longer a boy with clumsy feathers. He was part of the vastness itself, a thread in the endless tapestry of air and light. And yet, even in this triumph, his joy was gentle. No wild laughter, no bold declaration, just a quiet smile that no one else could see, and a whisper carried away by the wind. I am known. When he returned to the ground, the other children asked how it felt. They wanted stories of speed, of thrill, of conquest. But he only said, it was enough. They laughed at his plainness, but he did not mind. He carried the truth in his heart, and the truth required no defense. His mother, however, saw the difference. She noticed the way he walked afterward, lighter, as though a secret buoyed him from within. She touched his shoulder one evening and said softly, "You are growing into yourself." He did not answer, but he leaned into her warmth. He did not always understand her words, but he understood her heart. In the days that followed, Birdperson began to find new rituals. He would climb the ridges before dawn, stand in the chill air, and spread his wings even when the wind was still. He said nothing, but in his silence there was prayer. A prayer not to a god, but to the sky itself, to the vastness that had accepted him. Sometimes he thought about the stars. At night, lying on his back, he would remember the lift of air and wonder if stars felt the same when they shone, held by something unseen, steady in their place, content to glow. The thought made him peaceful. Perhaps all beings, whether winged or burning, lived by the same truth, to yield, to trust, to shine quietly where they were placed. It was not long before others began to notice his difference. He was not the strongest, he was not the fastest, but he was steady. His flights grew graceful, not wild. When others faltered, he slowed to guide them. When others boasted, he listened without envy. Slowly, respect bloomed where once there had been laughter. They began to call him not strange, but steadfast. And Birdperson accepted this not with pride, but with gratitude. He never sought to be more than what he was, a soul in conversation with the sky. One night, while watching the stars, his mother asked if he dreamed of greatness. He was quiet for a long time before answering. Then softly he said, "I dream of peace." It was a strange answer for one so young, but it was true. His first flight had shown him something beyond the thrill of wings. It had shown him that freedom was not about height or speed. It was about stillness, about trust, about letting go. And though he did not yet know how, he sensed that his life would be shaped by this truth, that in every friendship, in every sorrow, in every parting yet to come, he would return to that moment on the ridge when the sky first lifted him and whispered, "You are enough." For now, though, he remained a boy standing in the mist, feathers damp with dew, eyes wide with wonder. The world stretched out before him, vast and waiting, and within him the quiet promise of flight lingered, not loud, not urgent, but steady, like a lullaby sung to the night, like a feather drifting into sleep. Some lives are carried by storms, swept up in the loudness of fate, but others, like Birdperson's, are carried by gentler winds, winds that teach a soul to notice, to linger, to love the quiet. After his first true flights, his days unfolded slowly, wrapped in the rhythm of simple rituals. He did not rise each morning to chase greatness. He rose to listen, to watch, to gather the little pieces of life that most others stepped over without thought. At dawn, he would walk along the ridges with the dew still heavy on the grass. While others yawned and hurried to their duties, he bent down to trace the shapes that dewdrops made, tiny constellations glimmering on each blade. Sometimes he would cup them in his palms, tilting his hands so the sun lit them like stars resting on skin. Then when they slipped away and fell back to the ground, he would whisper a quiet thank you, as though each drop had been a visitor, lending him its light. He collected feathers too, not his own, but those shed by others. He found beauty in their variety, some mottled, some striped, some pale as snow, others dark as midnight. He kept them in careful bundles, arranging them into spirals, circles, and fans across the dirt. Each pattern told him something, though he could not explain it in words. He only knew that when he finished, he felt lighter, steadier, as though some inner balance had been restored. There were songs as well, not grand, practiced songs, but soft hums that drifted from his throat when the world grew too loud. They were simple notes, repeated again and again until they felt less like sound and more like breath itself. His companions teased him for it, saying he sang to the wind like a fool. But still, when the nights grew long and frightening, some of those same companions would seek him out, sitting quietly near him as he hummed. They never asked him to stop. They never admitted that his song soothed them, but he knew. He always knew. It was these little things, dew, feathers, hums, that shaped his heart more than any grand teaching. He learned that peace was not found in victory but in attention, that joy did not roar but whispered, that the smallest things could be infinite if you let them be. One afternoon, while arranging feathers in a slow circle, his mother came to him. She watched silently for a while, then asked, "Why do you do this?" He paused, tilting his head. "Because it feels right," he said. She smiled faintly. "And what does it give you?" He looked at the circle, at the soft symmetry of it. He could not put it into words, but after a long moment he murmured, "It reminds me the world is not broken." She kissed the top of his head and left him to his work. And though she never quite understood his rituals, she respected them. She saw that they gave him something no lesson or law could give, a way of holding the world gently, even when it seemed heavy. As he grew, his rituals grew with him. When others quarreled, he listened until the noise wore itself out, then offered a feather to each of them. A gift so small it seemed silly, yet somehow it softened tempers. When others felt lost, he hummed softly at their side until they remembered how to breathe again. He did not call these acts wisdom. He did not even think of them as kindness. They were simply his way of living. There is a tenderness in those who notice small things. A tenderness that does not shine with brilliance, but glows steadily like the embers of a fire at night. Birdperson carried that glow everywhere he went. It made him strange. It also made him unforgettable. He once told a friend quietly, "I think the smallest things stay with us the longest." His friend laughed, but Birdperson only shrugged. He meant it. He believed that long after battles were forgotten, someone would still remember the sound of a lullaby, or the warmth of a hand on theirs, or the sight of feathers drifting down through morning light. In time, this way of being gave him a certain gravity. People sought him out not for answers, but for presence. When he sat beside them, the world felt less sharp. His silences were not empty. They were filled with acceptance. He seemed to remind others without words that even in sorrow, life could be gentle. And always, when the day ended, he returned to his stars. He lay on his back, wings folded beneath him, watching until his eyes blurred with sleep. Each star felt like a companion, silent but steadfast. He imagined their voices were the same as his own hums, quiet, steady, infinite. In their light, he found his truest ritual of all, the ritual of remembering that he was part of something vast, and that the vastness was kind. Looking back now, it feels inevitable that his love for the small would one day define the great, that in noticing feathers and dewdrops he was learning how to notice people, their quiet longings, their unspoken wounds, the hidden songs in their hearts. It was these small rituals that would make him the friend Rick needed, the companion Tammy betrayed, the legend whispered long after. But for now he was still just a boy, gathering feathers in spirals, humming songs no one taught him, tracing constellations in the grass. A boy who believed that the smallest things were not small at all. And in that belief he carried a peace that the world could not easily take away, like a lullaby that lingers after sleep, like a feather still drifting even when no one is watching. Not every meeting that changes a life announces itself with thunder. Some begin as softly as a feather brushing against stone, so quiet you almost forget the moment until much later, when you realize everything began there. Rick entered Birdperson's story not as destiny fulfilled, but as disruption. A ripple across still water, a figure too loud, too quick, too reckless to belong in the hush of Birdperson's life. And yet, that was why he mattered. It was on a day when the sky hung low, bruised with clouds, the kind of day when the air feels heavy with unshed rain. Birdperson was sitting on a ridge, arranging his feathers into a slow spiral, humming to himself. He liked the waiting stillness of such days, the way the world seemed paused between breaths. That was when he heard it. Not the whisper of wind, not the rustle of wings, but a clatter, a curse, and a sound like metal striking rock. He turned. And there he was, Rick Sanchez, hair wild, eyes sharp, hands busy with a strange device sparking in the dust. He was muttering to himself, pieces of metal and wires spilling from his coat as though the ground itself had become his workbench. There was nothing quiet about him. His presence was like lightning, sudden, erratic, too bright for the soft day around him. Birdperson watched for a while in silence. He felt no urgency to interrupt. He simply observed the man bending over his invention, talking aloud as though arguing with the air. At last, Rick noticed him. He squinted, pushing his goggles up onto his forehead. "What are you staring at, Feathers?" His voice was rough, quick, defensive. The voice of someone used to being challenged. Birdperson tilted his head. "I was listening," he said simply. Rick snorted. "Listening? To what? I'm not exactly playing a symphony here." He waved at the sparks crackling across the device. "This is science, buddy. Dangerous, messy, loud, not bedtime music." But Birdperson did not flinch. He only said, "You sound like a storm." Rick blinked, caught off guard. For a moment his face softened, as if no one had ever described him that way before. Then he laughed, too loud, shaking his head. "Yeah, well, storms get things done. Sitting around humming at rocks doesn't build portals, you know." Birdperson lowered his gaze back to his spiral of feathers. "Storms break things," he murmured. For a moment, silence stretched between them. The wind picked up, carrying the faint smell of rain. Rick crouched again, fiddling with his device, muttering under his breath, but his movements were slower now, less sharp. Birdperson's words had lodged somewhere inside him, like a stone he couldn't quite ignore. After a long while, Rick spoke again. "So, you just sit here? Play with feathers? Hum to yourself?" "Yes." "And that works for you?" Birdperson nodded. "It reminds me the world is not broken." Rick stared at him, then let out a short laugh, not mocking this time, but surprised. "Huh, never thought about it like that." It was not a friendship yet, just two presences, uneasy in each other's company, one loud, one quiet, one storm, one stillness. And yet, something unspoken passed between them, a recognition, maybe even a need. Rick did not say it, but Birdperson felt it. He felt that beneath the noise, beneath the bravado, there was a loneliness in this stranger that hummed like his own songs in the night. They sat together until the rain began. Birdperson did not move, even as drops darkened his feathers. Rick cursed, shoved the sparking device into his coat, and stood abruptly. For a moment Birdperson thought he would leave without a word, but instead Rick looked back, squinting against the drizzle. "You're weird," he said. "Yes," Birdperson agreed. Rick smirked, shaking his head. "I like weird." And then, almost without realizing it, they walked down from the ridge together, one muttering about circuits and chemicals, the other humming softly to the rain. Two souls who seemed to have nothing in common, yet carried the same hidden weight, the weight of needing someone who might actually stay. Looking back, that day feels small. A meeting without fireworks, without revelation, just a storm and a spiral of feathers, a man and a boy who did not belong to each other's worlds. But life often begins that way, with threads so thin you barely notice them being tied. Birdperson would carry that first conversation in his heart for years to come. Not because of the words, but because of the feeling that for once someone louder than himself had paused, even briefly, to listen. And Rick, though he would never say it aloud, remembered too. He remembered the boy who told him storms break things. He remembered the quiet presence that did not flinch from his noise. And in his own strange way, he kept coming back. Because sometimes, even storms need a place to rest. Friendships do not always begin with vows or promises. Sometimes they grow in fragments, a conversation left unfinished, a silence shared without discomfort, a look that lingers a little longer than it should. So it was between Birdperson and Rick. After that first strange meeting on the ridge, Rick began appearing more often, sometimes with tools spilling out of his coat, sometimes with bottles that clinked when he moved, sometimes with nothing at all but his restless energy. Birdperson never asked why. He only welcomed his presence with quiet acceptance, as though Rick had always been meant to arrive. They were opposites, and yet their rhythms found each other. Rick filled the air with stories, half-truths and ramblings about machines, universes, experiments gone wrong. Birdperson rarely responded, but he, listened with a patience that surprised Rick. Where others rolled their eyes, Birdperson tilted his head as though even Rick's tangents deserved to be heard. And somehow that listening made Rick talk more, not just about science, but about his loneliness, about the absurdity of life, about the exhaustion of being too smart for his own good. Birdperson never offered answers. He offered presence. And often that was enough. One night, sitting under a sky wide with stars, Rick tossed a bottle aside and muttered, "You don't even get half of what I'm saying, do you?" Birdperson looked at him for a long moment before replying, "I do not always understand your words, but I understand your heart." Rick laughed sharply at that, but his eyes softened. He didn't argue. He didn't mock. He only leaned back against the grass, staring at the stars, and for once let the silence linger. Their companionship was not built on grand adventures at first. It was built on fragments, little things that would seem meaningless to anyone else. The way Rick always saved a seat for Birdperson when others crowded him. The way Birdperson quietly repaired Rick's scattered tools after the wind scattered them. The way they walked side by side saying nothing, and somehow the nothing meant more than words. There was a gentleness in the way Birdperson allowed Rick to be himself, storm and all. And there was a steadiness in the way Rick kept coming back, no matter how much he grumbled. A strange equilibrium formed, one storm, one stillness, circling each other in imperfect harmony. Others noticed, of course. They whispered about the odd pair, the quiet, feathered soul and the volatile scientist. Some called it unlikely, some called it foolish. But Rick and Birdperson ignored them. Or rather, Birdperson ignored them. And Rick pretended to, though his smirk grew sharper when anyone questioned his choice of friend. One evening, after a long stretch of silence, Rick muttered, "You know, you don't have to stick around me." "I'm not exactly good company." Birdperson tilted his head. "The sky does not choose the wind, it accepts it." Rick groaned. "You always got to talk like a fortune cookie?" But though he teased, he didn't leave. Birdperson, for his part, never tried to explain what he felt. But deep inside, he knew. He knew that Rick carried a loneliness heavy as stone, and that sometimes the weight of a storm could only be borne if someone sat quietly beside it. He knew that every laugh Rick forced too loudly was a shield, and that silence, not words, was what Rick needed most. And he knew that somehow, impossibly, Rick needed him. Their bond grew in this way, fragment by fragment, silence by silence, not fast, not flashy, just steady. And slowly, Birdperson began to hum less to himself. He began to hum when Rick was near. Sometimes Rick mocked the tune, humming back off key until they both smirked. But other times, when the nights stretched long and the stars seemed too far, Rick would close his eyes and let the sound carry him, as though Birdperson's song filled a hollow place even science could not reach. Looking back, it is easy to see. Their friendship was not born of shared words or perfect understanding. It was born of fragments, the kind that slip quietly into place until one day you realize they have built something whole. And though they could not have known it then, those fragments would hold even when everything else broke. For now, though, they were only two souls sitting side by side, one storm, one stillness, sharing the sky. And somewhere in the spaces between Rick's laughter and Birdperson's silence, a friendship was taking root, like a feather caught in the wind, like a star leaning closer to the earth. There are certain voices that slip through the noise of the world, even when you are not searching for them. Birdperson did not expect to notice hers. He was used to drifting at the edges of gatherings, quiet and observant, content to let Rick fill the air with his endless stories and interruptions. Yet one evening, when the hall was crowded and the chatter too loud to matter, he heard Tammy laugh. It was not a remarkable sound, not to anyone else, but to Birdperson it was clear, light, carrying the warmth of someone unafraid to be heard. His head tilted almost instinctively, feathers shifting as if the sound had called to him alone. She was younger than most in the room, her gestures quick, her eyes bright with a curiosity that did not hide behind irony or weariness. Where others circled Rick with questions, flattery, or suspicion, she moved easily, not caring whether her words impressed or disappointed. Birdperson noticed how she did not fight to be the center of things. She only seemed to belong without effort. Rick teased her, of course, that was his way, but even his sharp edges softened around her. Birdperson saw it, though Rick pretended not to notice. Rick's voice became lighter, his posture less guarded, as though Tammy's presence reminded him briefly of days he had almost forgotten. Birdperson did not understand all of this at once. He only knew that Tammy's laughter lingered. Days later, when he found her again in the courtyard, she greeted him without hesitation. "Hey, bird guy," she said, smiling as though she had known him forever. He blinked slowly, unsure how to reply. "My name is Birdperson." "I know," she answered, grinning wider. "But bird guy feels easier, like a nickname you didn't ask for, but secretly like." He studied her with solemn eyes, not sure if she was mocking him. But there was no cruelty in her voice, no sharpness, only warmth. Rick would have smirked. Rick would have barked out a sarcastic reply. Birdperson only stood in silence, then nodded once. "You may call me as you wish." Something in her expression softened, as though she had expected resistance but found instead a door, quietly open. She leaned against the wall, speaking casually, asking questions about his people, his music, his way of seeing the stars. He answered little, for words were not his strength, but she never pressed. She only smiled at what he offered, filling the gaps with her own stories, her own meandering tales of places visited and dreams half-formed. He did not always follow the details, but he understood her heart. And that was enough. From then on, she appeared often. Not intrusively, not demanding, only present. Sometimes she joined Rick's chaos, laughing at his jokes. Sometimes she walked beside Birdperson in silence, her steps light, unbothered by his stillness. And sometimes, when no one else listened, she asked questions not of his battles, not of his legends, but of his quiet. "Do you ever get tired of being so calm?" she once asked. He looked at her, feathers glinting faintly in the dusk. Calm is not the absence of weight. It is the choosing to carry it gently. She didn't laugh at that. She didn't tease. She only nodded slowly, as though the words had settled somewhere inside her, and whispered, "That makes sense." For Birdperson, it was unusual. Few people lingered long enough to hear his truths. Fewer still accepted them without turning away. Yet Tammy remained, not because she wanted his wisdom, but because she enjoyed the space he created. The way silence with him was never empty. Rick noticed, of course. He rolled his eyes at the way Birdperson tilted his head when she spoke, at the faint hush in his voice when she was near. "Careful, bird brain," Rick muttered one night, after Tammy had left the room. "That girl's got too much sparkle. You'll burn your wings if you get too close." Birdperson did not answer. He only looked toward the doorway where she had vanished, and for the first time in a long while felt something stirring he could not name. It was not love, not yet. It was not longing, not entirely. It was simply the recognition of a voice that had cut through the noise of the world and had chosen, for reasons he did not understand, to stay. And sometimes, in the quiet between stars, he found himself listening for her laughter, the way one listens for a song remembered but not fully sung. He did not know where it would lead. He only knew that something had shifted. And in the fragments of friendship he shared with Rick, a new fragment was now forming, a brightness, soft and unexpected, weaving itself into the stillness of his days. A voice in the crowd, a light on the edge of silence. There are certain doors we keep closed for so long that we forget what it feels like to open them. Birdperson had lived much of his life with such doors firmly shut. He spoke when necessary, he fought when asked, he listened when no one else could bear to. But the inner chambers of his soul, the places where longing and fragility lived, those he kept sealed away. Tammy had begun without realizing to stand at the threshold of one of those doors, and Birdperson did not quite know how to respond. Her presence was not loud. She did not demand to be let in. She laughed, yes, and filled silence with stories, but she also seemed unafraid of the pauses between words. She did not push against his stillness. She rested within it. And Birdperson, who had grown accustomed to solitude as his only companion, found himself wondering what it might mean to let her remain. One evening, she found him sitting on a ledge above the quiet expanse of a canyon. The sun had dropped low, painting the sky in long strokes of gold and violet. Birdperson hummed faintly, a fragment of an old song, when Tammy sat beside him without asking. She did not interrupt. She only leaned back, watching the sky with him. After a long stretch of silence, she asked softly, "Do you ever wish you could change the past?" Birdperson tilted his head. He thought carefully before answering. "The past is the stone we carry. Wishing will not make it lighter, choosing how to carry it. Perhaps that is all we can do." Tammy smiled faintly, her eyes still on the fading horizon. "That's beautiful. You always sound like a poem that doesn't know it's a poem." Birdperson was quiet at that. He had never thought of his words as beautiful. They were simply truth, spoken as it came to him. And yet, hearing her say it with such warmth, something shifted gently inside him, as if his truth had been seen for the first time. Rick, of course, noticed these changes. He noticed the way Birdperson's tone softened when Tammy was near, the way his silences grew longer but somehow warmer. And Rick, being Rick, responded not with tenderness but with sharpness. One night when the three of them sat together, Rick with a bottle, Tammy with her easy laughter, Birdperson with his still gaze, Rick leaned close to Birdperson and muttered under his breath, "She's making you sentimental." "Careful, BP, that's a dangerous habit." Birdperson only blinked slowly, answering in his calm, even voice. "Perhaps sentiment is not as dangerous as you believe?" Rick scoffed. "That's what makes it dangerous." But though he said it with mockery, there was something beneath Rick's eyes that Birdperson recognized. Fear. Not fear of Tammy, but fear of what Birdperson might lose if he leaned too far into something fragile. Birdperson understood. He did not argue. Instead, he turned his attention back to Tammy, who was tracing patterns in the dust with her finger, humming to herself without worry or hesitation, and something within him, something that had long been heavy with silence, felt lighter. Still in his solitude, Birdperson questioned himself. What did it mean to allow her presence inside? What if Rick was right? What if the doors of his heart were sealed for a reason? And yet, each time she smiled at him without expectation, each time she listened without judgment, each Time her voice rose like birdsong against the heavy quiet of the world. He felt the weight of those closed doors shifting. He did not open them fully, not yet, but cracks formed. Light slipped through. And in that light he saw a possibility he had never allowed himself before. The possibility that someone might see him not as Birdperson the warrior, not as Birdperson the symbol, but simply as himself. That possibility frightened him, but it also gave him hope. For the first time in a long while, he carried not only the stone of his past, but also a small, fragile feather of trust. It weighed almost nothing, but in its softness he felt a new kind of strength, and when he looked toward Tammy, laughing, radiant, unguarded, he wondered if perhaps some doors were never meant to remain closed forever. Birdperson's people carried their history not in books but in songs. Every feathered clan had melodies, passed quietly through generations, sung in twilight hours when the skies dimmed and the air was still. As a child he had learned them at the feet of his elders, their voices low, rising and falling like the wind between mountain peaks. To Birdperson those songs were sacred. They were not performances, they were prayers. To sing them outside the circle of his own kind had always felt unthinkable, like letting strangers wander through the rooms of his heart. And yet one night he found himself humming again. Not the fragmented, broken notes Rick had heard on long, drifting nights, but a fuller melody, one that had lived unspoken inside him for years. Tammy was there. She had joined him on the quiet ridge where the stars unfolded like silver dust. She said little, only leaned against a rock, her eyes tilted skyward, as though she were waiting for the universe to answer her unasked questions. Birdperson, seated nearby, felt the melody rising unbidden in his chest, as though the stillness between them had given the song permission to be born. At first he kept it low, almost inaudible, a sound only the stars might hear. But Tammy turned toward him, her expression soft, and whispered, "That's beautiful. Will you sing it louder?" He hesitated. His feathers shifted uneasily. "It is not meant for audiences." "I'm not an audience," she said gently, smiling at him in the dim light. "I'm just here, that's all." Her words settled over him like a cloak of warmth. Slowly, he allowed the melody to rise. His voice was deep, resonant, carrying not performance, but presence. The song unfolded with long, winding tones, no sharp rhythms, no easy chorus, only the patient weaving of sound that seemed to stretch time itself. Tammy closed her eyes. She did not interrupt. She did not giggle or try to hum along. She simply listened, and in her stillness Birdperson felt something rare. Acceptance. When the song faded into silence, he lowered his gaze, feathers settling back against his shoulders. He had expected her to comment, to ask what it meant, to fill the air with words. Instead, she remained quiet for a long time, the night wind whispering between them. Finally, she said, "That felt like home, even though I didn't understand the words." Birdperson's chest tightened. For most, the songs were incomprehensible, too ancient, too steeped in a language long forgotten. Yet she had felt the essence of it. She had touched the meaning not through knowledge, but through presence. "That is unusual," he admitted softly. Tammy smiled, her eyes glimmering with starlight. "Maybe not. Maybe music is like light. You don't have to explain it. You just have to sit under it and let it warm you." Birdperson tilted his head, considering her words. They were simple, yet they carried a truth his people had always known, that the songs were not lessons to be studied, but feelings to be held. Somehow she had understood without being told. From that night on, the bond between them shifted. It was not louder, not more dramatic, but deeper. Tammy had heard a song never shared beyond his people, and she had not broken it with curiosity or with questions. She had simply received it. Rick noticed the change, though he did not speak of it directly. He only grumbled more when Tammy lingered, joked more harshly, and poured his drinks a little quicker. Birdperson sensed the unease in him, but he also sensed that Rick, in some hidden way, was glad that Birdperson had found someone who could listen in a way Rick himself never could. Still, Birdperson kept the song close. He did not sing it often. He did not need to. The fact that he had shared it once was enough. Tammy carried it now, even in silence. And sometimes, when she laughed in the daylight, or sat beside him in stillness, he felt the melody echo faintly between them, unspoken but alive. A song never shared, now resting in the heart of another. It was both terrifying and comforting, and though Birdperson did not say the words aloud, a part of him whispered quietly within, "Perhaps this is what trust sounds like." Life often unfolds in contrasts. Birdperson had learned this slowly over years that stretched like long shadows beneath alien suns. Some days carried storm and fire, and some carried silence and silver light. Most days carried both. Rick was chaos incarnate. His presence was a whirlwind of loud laughter, sharp intellect, and relentless movement. He could turn a calm day into a tempest with a single idea, a single gesture. And Birdperson, who had grown accustomed to measured steps and quiet observation, often felt both drawn to Rick's energy and wary of it. Tammy, in contrast, was quiet water. She flowed gently into the spaces he had long held sacred. She did not demand attention, she only offered presence. Where Rick raged, Tammy soothed. Where Rick questioned, Tammy listened. And Birdperson, who had lived so long between extremes, began to realize he needed both. One evening, the three of them found themselves on a ridge overlooking a world painted in twilight. The sky stretched in gradients of deep purple and silver, clouds drifting lazily across moons that reflected pale light. Rick leaned against a rock, tinkering with a small, humming device, muttering technical words Birdperson did not fully understand. Tammy sat beside Birdperson, quiet and patient, fingers tracing circles in the dust. Birdperson inhaled slowly, letting the sounds of both companions reach him. Rick's muttering was sharp and chaotic, cutting through the calm, while Tammy's soft breathing offered a counterpoint, steady and grounding. The juxtaposition, rather than jarring, felt balanced, as if he was seated at the edge of two worlds simultaneously. "Why do you let him do that?" Tammy whispered, nodding toward Rick, who was tinkering with a strange contraption that emitted tiny sparks. Birdperson considered her question. "Because he cannot help it. He is fire, and fire, even if reckless, is necessary. It illuminates, it destroys, it warms, sometimes all at once." Tammy tilted her head. "And I'm water." He gave a faint nod, feathers brushing the night air. "Water softens fire, it carries it, contains it without extinguishing it entirely. Both are needed, both must exist." Rick, oblivious to their conversation, whistled a sharp note and muttered something about temporal flux. Birdperson smiled softly. Even chaos could be beautiful if one observed with patience. That night, as they camped beneath the twin moons, Birdperson reflected on the delicate balance he had begun to cultivate. He realized that his own growth, the quiet flowering of his soul, had been shaped by both extremes. Rick pushed him to question, to act, to confront chaos without flinching. Tammy reminded him to breathe, to feel, to rest in moments of stillness without guilt. It was a delicate dance, this interplay between fire and water, chaos and calm. Birdperson learned to navigate it, to listen to both voices without being overwhelmed, he discovered that the song of life was not composed in a single key but in harmony, often dissonant, yet beautiful in its entirety. Over the following days, Birdperson observed small, subtle patterns. Rick's chaos often led to unexpected revelations, moments of insight that Birdperson might never have reached alone. Tammy's quietness created space for reflection, for memory, for emotional healing. In their presence, he could be fully himself, both wary and curious, tender and vigilant. One evening, after a long day of strange adventures and soft, whispered conversations, Birdperson found himself sitting quietly, watching Rick and Tammy interact. Rick was gesturing wildly, a mixture of explanation and exasperation, while Tammy listened, nodding occasionally, eyes bright with understanding and patience. Birdperson realized with a quiet awe that he had never seen such balance in his life before. He had always carried solitude as both shield and companion. But now he carried relationships that challenged him and nurtured him simultaneously. He understood that growth, true and lasting, often came not from solitude or chaos alone, but from the interplay between them. He turned to Tammy, who caught his gaze and smiled softly. No words were exchanged, none were needed. In that quiet moment, they shared understanding, a mutual recognition of the delicate balance they were learning to maintain together. Rick, noticing the shared glance, raised an eyebrow. "What are you two plotting now?" he asked, though his voice lacked real suspicion. Birdperson smiled faintly. "Nothing, Rick. Simply observing the stars." Rick shrugged, muttered something about entropy, and returned to his tinkering. The night continued, quiet yet alive, filled with the gentle hum of devices, the whisper of wind, and the soft cadence of presence. Birdperson leaned back on the ridge, eyes tracing the lines of the constellations, and reflected on the subtle beauty of life's contrasts. Chaos was necessary, tenderness essential, and in between them a quiet music thrived, a song of balance, of patience, of quiet courage. He realized that he had been living in fragments, scattered between memory and action, grief and curiosity. But now, with Rick's relentless energy and Tammy's steady care, he felt whole in a way that was neither loud nor dramatic, but quietly profound. And as he drifted towards sleep beneath the soft moons, he hummed a note, low and steady, a song that carried both the wildness of fire and the gentleness of water. The melody wrapped around him a lullaby of balance, a reminder that life, though unpredictable, could be beautiful in its entirety. For the first time in a long while, Birdperson did not feel alone. He felt part of a delicate harmony, where chaos and calm, fire and water, existence and reflection could coexist. And in that quiet understanding, he found rest. And somewhere in the night, as the stars glimmered faintly above, he whispered softly to himself, "This is enough. This is home." There are moments when the past drifts into the present like a soft wind through an open window. Birdperson had learned to notice these echoes not with fear, but with gentle curiosity. They were reminders of where he had been, of the small decisions and fleeting moments that had shaped him, shaping who he was becoming. One late evening, Birdperson found himself walking alone along a narrow ridge beneath two fading moons. The stars were sparse, pinpricks of silver in the darkening sky. The air smelled faintly of dust and distant rain, carrying a quiet rhythm he could almost hum along with. Each step was deliberate, measured, as though the earth itself guided him. Memories began to surface. Fragments of old conversations, long-forgotten journeys, and the faces of friends who had once been close but had drifted into the vastness of time. Birdperson did not resist these memories. He welcomed them like old letters found in the back of a drawer. There was no grief here, only reflection. A gentle, even tender acknowledgement of what had been. He paused near a cluster of crystalline rocks that shimmered faintly under the moon's glow. The light refracted into subtle colors, soft blues and muted golds. He could almost hear the faint echo of laughter, not his own, but that of someone he had once known. Perhaps it was a friend, perhaps a guide. Birdperson could not remember precisely. But it did not matter. Memory, he realized, was less about clarity and more about feeling. As he lingered there, a familiar presence approached. Tammy's quiet steps made no sound, yet her arrival was immediately comforting. She sat beside him on a smooth rock, letting silence stretch between them like a soft blanket. "You're thinking about them again," she said gently, not accusing, merely noticing. Birdperson nodded, feathers rustling faintly in the evening breeze. "The past, it visits sometimes. Not to haunt, but to remind." Tammy looked up at the stars, tilting her head. "Do you ever feel that it's not just the past visiting, but that the past is guiding you?" He considered her words. Perhaps she was right. Memory was not merely a record, it was a quiet teacher. Every lesson had arrived softly, without command, but had shaped him profoundly. He had grown strong not through loud victories or battles, but through small, thoughtful choices and the guidance of those who had walked beside him, even briefly. They remained in silence for some time, letting the night carry their thoughts. Somewhere, distant but audible, the faint hum of Rick's tinkering travelled across the ridge. It was sharp and discordant, yet strangely comforting. Even chaos, Birdperson realized, had its rhythm. Even chaos could be familiar. Tammy shifted closer. "I like these moments," she whispered. "When the world is quiet and we can just be." Birdperson turned his gaze to her, soft awe in his eyes. He did not always understand words perfectly, nor did he need to. He understood her heart, her presence, the gentle constancy she offered. In this quiet sharing, he felt a connection deeper than explanation, a bond that required no action, only acknowledgement. The ridge seemed to expand around them, stretching into a realm where time slowed. Birdperson thought of all the places he had been, the distant galaxies, the strange planets, the wars he had avoided, and the ones he had witnessed in silence. He realized now that the most profound journeys were not the ones filled with spectacle, but those filled with quiet discovery. "Do you think we ever truly leave the past behind?" Tammy asked, her voice almost a hum. Birdperson reflected. "Number we carry it like feathers in our wings. Sometimes it feels heavy, sometimes it floats with us, but always it shapes the flight." Tammy's hand brushed his softly, and Birdperson felt a warmth he had not anticipated. The gesture was small, yet it resonated deeply, like a note held just long enough to echo in memory. It reminded him that connection, gentle, intentional, and present, could be as powerful as any action he had ever taken. They stayed like that side by side until the moons dipped lower, casting long, stretching shadows across the ridge. Birdperson's thoughts drifted further, touching on times he had been alone, when loss and solitude had seemed endless. Now he felt the echo of those experiences not as sorrow, but as quiet wisdom. They had brought him here, to this moment, to this gentle companionship. He imagined all the echoes of his life, each memory like a soft ripple across water, connecting past and present in patterns that were subtle but undeniably beautiful. There was the memory of a distant friend offering a simple piece of advice. There was the memory of a choice he had made in hesitation, which had led to unexpected kindness. There was the faint memory of a voice that had whispered encouragement in a galaxy far from here. All of them converged in this quiet moment beside Tammy in the gentle night. Birdperson felt a subtle shift within himself, a realization that life's beauty often lay not in grand gestures, but in the soft, nearly invisible threads that connected one heart to another. The ridge seemed to hum with quiet approval, the stars twinkling faintly, as if acknowledging his understanding. Birdperson allowed himself to lean back, resting on the rock, wings folded comfortably. He closed his eyes, feeling the night wrap around him like a soft shawl. Tammy stayed nearby, her presence a gentle anchor. "Rest now," she whispered. "You've carried so much today, so many days. Let the night take care of you for a while." And Birdperson did. He felt the rhythm of his own breath, slow and steady, the warmth of shared presence, the comforting echo of past experiences, even chaos, even memory, even fleeting grief. All seemed to settle into a quiet balance. Somewhere, faintly, he imagined Rick's laughter, and even that sounded like a lullaby when refracted through the calm of this night. Birdperson felt the gentle pulse of the universe around him, small, subtle, and perfectly attuned to the cadence of his own being. As sleep began to brush the edges of his awareness, he whispered softly, "Everything is connected. All is remembered, all is carried, all is here." The moons dipped lower, stars shimmered faintly, and Birdperson allowed himself to drift fully into the night. There was no urgency, no pressing need for action. Only presence, reflection, and the gentle embrace of quiet companionship. And somewhere in the silent world, he thought he heard a faint voice, not commanding, not questioning, simply present, simply caring. It reminded him gently that he was never truly alone. And so Birdperson slept beneath the twin moons, a soft song of memory and presence carrying him gently onward. There is a rhythm to quiet change, a movement so subtle that it almost slips past the noticing eye. Birdperson had come to understand this in the still spaces between action and thought, between sleep and wakefulness. Change did not always arrive with urgency or clamor. Often it arrived softly, like dawn brushing the sky with pale light, unnoticed until warmth was already present. In the days that followed his walk along the ridge, Birdperson began to notice little shifts in himself. It was not a transformation marked by spectacle or declaration, but by small awakenings. A nuance of thought here, a gentle awareness there. He found himself listening more closely, observing more tenderly, and even speaking in tones softer than he had used before. Rick's influence, though always chaotic and brash, lingered like a distant current beneath the surface of his consciousness. Not the loud adventures, not the explosions of intellect, but the quieter lessons, the subtle encouragements to see beyond immediate appearances, to recognize patterns in the universe that others ignored. Birdperson began to perceive these patterns not with precision, but with intuition, allowing them to shape his choices with gentle care. One afternoon, as a muted sun filtered through the clouds of a quiet planet, Birdperson found himself repairing a small piece of machinery Rick had left behind. It was a simple device, humming faintly, waiting to be understood. His claws moved delicately, aligning wires, adjusting circuits, smoothing edges. As he worked, he thought of the lessons Rick had imparted in his loud, indirect way, that the smallest actions could ripple outward in ways no one could predict, that patience and observation often carried more power than force or fury. Tammy arrived quietly, as she often did, her presence a steady rhythm in his day. She watched him work, the faintest smile playing at her lips. "You've changed," she observed softly, not in judgment, only noticing. Birdperson paused, claws resting on the smooth metal. "Perhaps," he said quietly. "I do not feel different all at once. Change is patient." She nodded, understanding without needing elaboration. "It's in the little things, isn't it? The way you look at the stars, the way you listen, the way you care." He considered her words, letting them settle like dust in sunlight. Perhaps she was right. Perhaps the subtle shifts mattered more than the grand gestures he had once imagined defined a life. As evening approached, they wandered together to a grove of tall, whispering trees. The leaves shimmered faintly, reflecting colors Birdperson had never before noticed: pale golds, soft violets, and a hint of silver. Each rustle carried a quiet message, a note of patience and reflection. He felt the energy of the grove not as intrusion, but as guidance, a gentle invitation to notice and be present. Birdperson spoke first. "I have been thinking about how we are shaped, not just by the events we endure, but by the subtle echoes around us, by small choices, small gestures, and even small presences." Tammy's gaze softened. "You're learning to see the invisible threads," she said. "The ones that tie memory to moment, action to consequence, the ones that carry care without needing to announce it." He nodded. "Yes. I see now that transformation is not a destination but a quiet journey, one that unfolds without fanfare but with depth." For a while they walked in silence, letting their thoughts merge with the soft rustle of leaves and the distant hum of unknown creatures. Birdperson felt a sense of gentle awe, a recognition that life's patterns were delicate, yet resilient, intricate, yet forgiving. It was a meditation without words, a lullaby without sound. Later, as night fell, they returned to the ridge beneath the twin moons. The stars blinked softly, mirrored in the faint shimmer of crystalline rocks. Birdperson crouched to rest, wings folding with practiced ease. He felt the subtle ripples of change within him, an awareness of patience, a capacity for understanding, a softness in thought that had not been there before. Tammy settled nearby, letting the quiet companionship speak more than words could. Birdperson reflected on the lessons of the day, seeing them like faint constellations stretching across the mind. Each small insight was a star, a quiet beacon illuminating the path forward. He remembered Rick in all his chaotic brilliance. Even in loudness there had been wisdom, hidden, unassuming, often overlooked. The way Rick had allowed Birdperson to explore, to stumble, to learn at his own pace. It was a lesson in trust, in quiet support, in the recognition that true guidance often arrived without applause. Birdperson closed his eyes briefly, letting the night enfold him. He felt Tammy's presence as a warm, steady pulse beside him, a reminder that care and attention could be transformative in the gentlest way. Even silence, he realized, could carry meaning, a form of communication that left impressions far deeper than words ever could. A faint breeze whispered through the rocks, carrying the scent of distant flowers and the faint echo of laughter. Birdperson inhaled slowly, sensing that the universe had its own rhythm, one that aligned with the patient unfolding of understanding. It was a rhythm that required no hurry, no struggle, only presence and attention. He thought of all the small acts that had shaped him, the kindness of strangers, the soft guidance of mentors, the quiet companionship of friends. Each had left a mark, subtle yet enduring, forming a foundation for the person he was quietly becoming. Transformation, he realized, was a mosaic of these small moments, each one significant, each one irreplaceable. The moons rose higher, bathing the ridge in gentle light. Birdperson stretched his wings slowly, feeling the shift within them, the quiet strengthening of muscles, and mind. He whispered to himself a soft affirmation. I am here. I am learning. I am present. Tammy leaned back, eyes half closed, and whispered, You are becoming gently the best version of yourself, and that's enough. Birdperson felt warmth in those words, a deep, resonant peace. He realized that growth did not always need recognition, and understanding did not always need articulation. Presence, observation, quiet action, these were the true measures of evolution, subtle yet profound. As sleep began to beckon, the ridge wrapped them both in gentle calm. Birdperson felt the threads of day, of memory, of quiet growth, weave together into a soft tapestry. Each thread was a lesson, a presence, a memory. Each thread reminded him that life's most important changes often arrived silently, imperceptibly, and yet left an indelible mark. And somewhere, distant yet unmistakable, he imagined Rick tinkering with his chaotic brilliance, a faint smile hidden beneath layers of mischief. It was a reminder that even the loudest, most unpredictable presences could leave lessons of quiet significance, shaping hearts without intention or fanfare. Birdperson closed his eyes fully, wings folded and breath steady. The night, the moons, the stars, Tammy's quiet presence, all merged into a gentle lullaby of awareness. Transformation was not a thunderous event, but a quiet unfolding, a meditation of the soul. And as the ridge hummed softly beneath the twin moons, Birdperson whispered into the night, I am here. I am present. I am learning. Somewhere, Tammy murmured in agreement, a soft harmony, to his quiet reflection. And with that, Birdperson allowed sleep to carry him gently, a silent, patient transformation echoing in dreams, a reminder that the most profound changes often arrive softly, like feathers drifting on the wind. The universe had a quiet way of speaking if one only learned to listen. Birdperson had discovered this not through grand adventures, but through small, lingering moments, the kind that passed unnoticed unless one paused long enough to feel them. There was a softness in the world that often went unseen, a gentle heartbeat beneath chaos and light. And in that heartbeat, he began to perceive the tender pulse of hope. It arrived first as a whisper, a delicate suggestion in the mind rather than a declaration. The ridge beneath the twin moons, the soft hum of crystalline rocks, the faint rustle of leaves, each seemed to carry the memory of possibilities, of connections waiting to be noticed. Birdperson inhaled slowly, letting the rhythm of the night seep into him, teaching him patience, not through instruction, but through quiet resonance. He remembered moments of laughter and sorrow shared with others, fragile yet enduring. Tammy's steady presence had become more than companionship. It was a mirror of understanding, a reflection of trust and quiet encouragement. And Rick, in all his unpredictable brilliance, had left him subtle reminders that life was less about control and more about engagement, noticing the threads that connected one being to another. One evening, as they sat together on the ridge, a gentle wind swept across the landscape, carrying distant scents of alien flora and the faint echo of unseen creatures. Birdperson turned his gaze to Tammy, her eyes catching the pale glow of the moons. "Do you feel it?" he asked softly, voice barely more than a whisper. Tammy smiled faintly. "Sometimes," she said, "it's like the world is alive in quiet ways we forget to notice. Little connections, little moments. They're everywhere if we let them be." Birdperson nodded. It was true. He realized that hope was not a loud declaration, but a subtle awareness, a recognition that life continued to unfold, that bonds were present even in silence, that small gestures carried weight beyond measure. He thought of his past, of battles fought not with swords, but with courage to remain present. He thought of friends lost and moments of solitude, of lessons learned in quiet observation. And slowly he understood that hope was not a distant star to be reached, but a thread woven into the fabric of existence, delicate yet unbreakable. Night deepened, wrapping them in a gentle blanket of starlight. Birdperson closed his eyes, listening to the rhythm of the wind and the soft breathing of Tammy beside him. Each breath, each rustle, each tiny shimmer in the landscape became a reminder of continuity, of connection, of the unspoken presence of care. He thought of Rick again, chaotic and unpredictable, yet unmistakably influential. Even in his flaws, Rick's presence offered lessons in resilience and adaptability. Birdperson realized that connection did not require perfection. It required awareness, empathy, and the courage to engage, however gently. In that realization, he found a quiet thrill, not loud, not urgent, but deep and sustaining. It was a recognition that life's threads, though fragile, were often more enduring than one imagined. Bonds formed in silence could carry more weight than those forged in clamor. Small gestures of kindness, subtle acknowledgments, and tender listening were as powerful as any dramatic act of heroism. Birdperson turned his attention to the horizon, where the moon's reflection met the crystalline plains. The landscape seemed to hum with the weight of stories untold, of quiet heroism and unseen courage. He felt a gentle connection to every living thing around him, as though the world itself acknowledged his presence and his attentiveness. And in that acknowledgement, hope blossomed quietly, like a flower unfolding beneath the moonlight. Tammy shifted beside him, a subtle warmth radiating in the still night. "Do you ever wonder," she asked softly, "if the connections we make ripple further than we know? That every small kindness, every gentle word, leaves an imprint somewhere?" Birdperson considered this. He could feel the truth in it, in the echoes of past interactions, in the quiet lessons that lingered long after moments had passed. "Yes," he said finally. "I think they do. Even the smallest actions shape the world in ways we may never fully see." The words felt like a bridge, linking thought to reality, presence to possibility. Birdperson understood that hope, connection, and growth were entwined. A lattice of subtle significance, fragile yet resilient. He felt gratitude for the lessons of the past, for the companions who had walked beside him, and for the quiet spaces that allowed reflection to bloom. As the night deepened further, he contemplated the vast expanse of stars above, each one a distant witness to countless lives and stories. He imagined the soft whispers of those who had come before him, their echoes threading through the cosmos like gentle currents. Each presence, each memory, each act of care contributed to an invisible tapestry of understanding and hope. Birdperson's heart, so often burdened with the weight of observation and memory, felt lighter in that moment. He recognized that the world was not solely defined by struggle or loss, but by these quiet, enduring threads of connection. In noticing them, he had discovered a gentle courage, the courage to hope, the courage to care, the courage to simply be present. Tammy's voice cut through the quiet like a soft bell. "Look," she said, pointing toward a faint shimmer along the horizon. "Even here, in the stillness, there is movement, life, something persistent. We just have to notice." Birdperson followed her gaze. The shimmer could have been light reflecting off crystal, a distant creature moving, or perhaps a trick of the moon's glow. It mattered little. What mattered was the recognition that life continued quietly, persistently, beautifully. And in that recognition, hope found fertile ground to grow. He turned toward Tammy, his feathers catching the pale luminescence. "I think I understand," he said. "Hope is not a distant prize. It is present in every small act, every silent gesture, every awareness we nurture." She nodded, a smile forming that held warmth, understanding, and reassurance. "Yes," she said, "and when we carry that with us, we contribute to the quiet beauty of the world." The two of them remained on the ridge, wrapped in soft reflection. The moon's light painted gentle patterns across the crystalline plains, and the wind whispered faint encouragements. Birdperson felt a calm, meditative rhythm settle over him, a lullaby of understanding, a gentle reminder that the quiet moments often held the deepest significance. He thought once more of Rick, of lessons learned in chaos and observation, of laughter and frustration intertwined, of subtle guidance delivered amidst unpredictability. And Birdperson realized that connection and hope were not given or taken lightly, but nurtured, observed, and sustained. The night stretched around them like a soft embrace. Birdperson closed his eyes, breathing in the rhythm of the wind, the presence of Tammy, and the faint hum of the universe. Every thread of experience, every whisper of care, every reflection of hope became a part of him, weaving a quiet tapestry that held him steady, that prepared him to meet the days ahead with patience and presence. And as the ridge hummed softly beneath the twin moons, Birdperson allowed himself to drift gently towards sleep. Hope, he understood, was not a distant star, but the awareness of the threads we choose to notice, the bonds we nurture, the small acts of care that ripple quietly through life. Somewhere, Rick continued his chaotic tinkering, unaware of the subtle lessons he had imparted. And somewhere, Tammy's gentle presence reminded Birdperson that attention, care, and awareness were forms of courage in themselves. And with that, Birdperson folded his wings slowly, letting the rhythm of the night and the threads of hope carry him gently into dreams, where connection, understanding, and quiet courage bloomed softly, endlessly, without need of urgency or announcement. The universe often spoke in whispers, not the kind that demanded attention, but those that lingered softly at the edges of thought, like the faintest hum of a lullaby. Birdperson had come to recognize these whispers as gentle invitations, quiet encouragements to pause, reflect, and notice. In their subtleness lay guidance, fragile yet persistent. He walked slowly across the crystalline plains, his talons brushing softly against the glittering surface. Each step was deliberate, careful, as though the ground itself were holding a secret meant to be discovered only by those willing to notice the quiet rhythm of life. The twin moons hung low, casting silver trails across the landscape, and Birdperson felt a gentle connection between their steady glow and the faint stirrings of hope within him. "Life has its own rhythm," he murmured, speaking more to himself than anyone else. "It whispers, waits, nudges." The wind responded, rustling through crystalline growths and the sparse alien flora, a sound like distant chimes. Birdperson paused, listening. In that sound he thought he could hear echoes of past moments. Laughter, advice, fleeting gestures of kindness. Each echo felt like a thread connecting him to something larger, something both gentle and immense. Tammy walked beside him, her presence quiet but grounding. She didn't speak immediately, choosing instead to let the silence settle. She had learned over time that these pauses held meaning. Sometimes words were unnecessary. Sometimes attention alone could convey the depth of care and understanding. After a long while, she said softly, "Do you ever feel like the universe is trying to tell you something, not in words, but in patterns? Little hints that remind you you're not alone?" Birdperson nodded. Yes, it's subtle. Almost invisible, but persistent. The hum of the wind, the shimmer of the moons, the echo of moments, they all seem like quiet reminders of presence, of connection. He remembered how, long ago, he had felt unmoored, wandering from one moment to another without sense of continuity. Now he began to perceive continuity not in grand gestures or sweeping events, but in small, persistent echoes. A laugh shared, a word of advice remembered, the gentle presence of someone who understood without explanation. These were the threads that stitched existence together. The wind shifted, carrying a faint scent of something both familiar and strange. Birdperson inhaled, letting the aroma settle in his mind. He recognized it from a long-forgotten memory. A distant world, a quiet moment of laughter, the gentle advice of a mentor. The memory arrived without urgency, yet it carried weight, like a soft beam of light, guiding him through the dark spaces of reflection. "Do you notice how some moments come back to us?" he said to Tammy, "as if they were never really gone? Even when we forget, they leave a trace, a quiet reminder that life continues and that we continue with it." Tammy nodded, eyes tracing the silver streaks of the moons across the horizon. "Yes, they linger, don't they? Like footprints left on the soul. Sometimes we follow them without knowing, and sometimes they find us when we least expect." Birdperson smiled faintly. There was a warmth in that recognition, a quiet comfort. Life was not simply a series of isolated events. It was an intricate pattern of presence, awareness, and gentle influence. And if one paid attention even subtly, the pattern revealed itself in ways that felt both miraculous and intimate. They walked on, the soft sound of their footsteps mingling with the quiet rustling of the wind. In the distance, faint shimmerings suggested movement. Perhaps a creature, perhaps the glint of crystalline formations catching moonlight. Birdperson didn't rush to identify it. He simply observed, letting the moment unfold. And as he did, he felt a subtle awareness, a thread of understanding weaving itself through his consciousness. These echoes, these quiet signals, reminded him that he was part of something larger, not through power or spectacle, but through observation, attention, and care. Life spoke in subtleties, and he had learned to listen. The moons shifted, their glow softening as if to remind him that even celestial bodies moved in gentle rhythm, never rushed, always persistent. Birdperson understood that the universe's whisper was a form of guidance, not commands, not urgencies, but invitations, soft nudges toward awareness, reflection, and patience. He recalled lessons learned from Rick, who often left behind chaos as a backdrop for unexpected insight. Even amidst confusion, there was meaning if one paused to notice. Birdperson had come to see that his own life mirrored this rhythm. Moments of turmoil often preceded quiet understanding. Confusion often paved the way for clarity. And subtle guidance, when noticed, became the foundation for hope. Tammy's voice drew him back from reflection. "Do you think we're ever meant to understand everything?" she asked softly. "Or maybe it's enough to just notice, to feel, to follow the echoes as they come?" Birdperson considered this. "I think noticing is enough," he said. "Understanding everything would be overwhelming, perhaps impossible, but to pay attention, to feel, to recognize presence and connection, that is where the universe shares its lessons." A faint streak of light arced across the sky, a comet perhaps, or simply a reflection of moonlight on distant dust. Birdperson lifted his gaze, allowing the quiet beauty to settle over him. There was no rush, no expectation, only observation, awareness, and the gentle pleasure of noticing what was already there. He felt a quiet joy in that simple act. a deep serenity that was more fulfilling than any dramatic revelation. Hope, connection, and understanding did not always arrive in loud or obvious ways. Sometimes they came as whispers, as echoes, as soft currents that nudged one toward reflection. Birdperson walked on, each step a meditation. Each inhalation carried recognition, and each exhalation released lingering doubt. The universe, he realized, was patient. It offered guidance not as a demand but as a quiet presence, gently threading meaning through the tapestry of life. By the time they reached a gentle rise overlooking the plains, the first hints of dawn brushed the horizon. The moon's glow softened, and a new light began to mingle with the silver hues. Birdperson paused, letting the subtle transition settle in his mind. Every echo, every whisper, every faint shimmer had led to this quiet moment of awareness, a reminder that life, in all its subtlety, was persistent, continuous, and deeply connected. He turned toward Tammy, sharing a soft smile. "The universe is always speaking," he said. "Even if we cannot hear everything, the echoes guide us. And in noticing them, we find hope." Tammy smiled in return, her gaze tracing the distant shimmer of morning. "Yes, and we are never truly alone. The threads of connection are always there, waiting to be felt." Birdperson closed his eyes briefly, folding his wings around himself. He felt the rhythm of the universe pulse gently through him, a soft lullaby of understanding, reflection, and quiet courage. And as the first light of the new day mingled with the residual glow of the moons, he allowed himself to drift into a calm, meditative rest, comforted by the presence of echoes, whispers, and threads of hope that would continue to guide him gently through life. And somewhere, in the stillness of the plains, Birdperson let the gentle rhythm of the universe carry him into dreams, where the quiet guidance of the cosmos whispered softly in every movement, every flicker, every breath. The morning light was soft, spilling over the crystalline plains like a warm, cautious hand. Birdperson stretched his wings slowly, feeling the faint vibration of life in every glimmering surface around him. The world seemed quieter than usual, not empty, but expectant, as if it had paused just for a moment to let him notice the little things. He walked without hurry, talons brushing gently over the smooth ground. Tiny patterns formed in the dust, lines, spirals, traces of creatures that had passed before. Each mark felt deliberate, though he knew it was not made for him. And yet he understood that sometimes the universe left these quiet signs to encourage reflection, gentle reminders of presence and connection. "Even small things matter," he whispered to himself. "Even unnoticed paths are part of the greater story." Tammy followed, her eyes soft and observant. She didn't speak, letting the silence deepen, letting the subtle signs of the world sink into their shared awareness. Birdperson sensed that these pauses, these small moments of noticing, were teaching him patience, a careful attention to rhythm, pattern, and meaning. A distant rustle caught his attention. A small, luminous creature scuttled across the plains, its tiny body shimmering like a drop of liquid starlight. Birdperson knelt and watched quietly. The creature paused, as if acknowledging his presence, then vanished into a hidden crevice. He felt no fear, only curiosity and calm, understanding that life often passed in brief, quiet gestures. "Little things can leave the deepest impressions," Birdperson said, more to Tammy than anyone else. "A glance, a gesture, a shared breath. They echo longer than the grandest moments." She nodded, her gaze following his. "It's these small threads that tie us together, isn't it?" Birdperson smiled faintly. "Yes, and sometimes we find meaning not by searching, but by noticing what is already there. The plains began to shimmer in response to the rising sun. Tiny crystalline flowers opened, reflecting light in a delicate dance. Birdperson paused to watch, feeling the rhythm of growth, decay, and renewal in every delicate motion. Each flower was small, fragile, and yet persistent. And in their quiet persistence, he found a reflection of his own journey, subtle, slow, and full of meaning even in silence. As he continued walking, he noticed a faint trail of footprints in the dust, too deliberate to be random. He followed them slowly, talons barely disturbing the ground, sensing that these marks were part of the universe's soft guidance. Each step he took felt like a conversation, a gentle question. "Do you see me? Are you paying attention?" And he did. Birdperson understood that the world often communicated not through loud declarations, but through persistent, gentle signals. A falling leaf, a shift of wind, a shared silence, each was a nudge, a signpost leading toward understanding, toward awareness. He looked at Tammy, smiling softly. Even when we feel alone, there are always signs. Guidance often comes quietly, softly, like a friend leaning close to whisper, "You are not lost." She reached out, lightly touching his arm. And when we notice, we honor the world's patience. We acknowledge the care that's always been there. A soft breeze stirred around them, carrying a scent faintly reminiscent of faraway places. Memories of laughter, lessons remembered, quiet mentorship from moments long past. Birdperson inhaled slowly, letting the essence settle deep in his chest. Each breath reminded him that even the unseen threads, the hidden moments, carried meaning. As the day progressed, they wandered through crystalline valleys and quiet groves, encountering signs at every turn. A flower bent slightly toward the sun, a distant bird paused in flight, a faint echo of laughter floated across the plains. None of it demanded attention, yet all of it spoke. Birdperson listened carefully, feeling the gentle guidance of these signals. Sometimes he felt he could almost trace a pattern, a subtle choreography of moments leading him forward, teaching him to move slowly, observe closely, and trust the quiet rhythm of existence. Every gentle sign became part of a tapestry, delicate yet persistent, reminding him that life was not random, but threaded with small, meaningful gestures. In one quiet grove, he knelt beside a stream, letting the water trickle over his talons. The flow carried reflections of clouds, moons, and stars, reminding him that even movement, continuous, gentle, and unhurried, could be beautiful and instructive. He understood that patience and attentiveness often revealed more than hurried action ever could. Tammy watched him with a soft smile. "I think the universe is teaching us something," she said, "not through words or grand events, but through whispers, moments, and signs. If we notice them, we learn. If we ignore them, they pass quietly, waiting." Birdperson nodded, feeling a calm certainty. And in noticing, we honor the universe's quiet patience. We learn the language of subtlety, the rhythm of care, and the poetry hidden in ordinary moments. As evening approached, they rested on a gentle rise overlooking the plains. The moons had begun to return, casting a serene silver glow over the landscape. Birdperson felt a deep calm settle in him. Every step, every breath, every quiet sign had been part of the journey. A soft preparation for understanding, reflection, and gentle awakening. He closed his eyes, letting the rhythm of the world settle around him. He understood now that guidance was everywhere, in subtle gestures, quiet presence, and persistent whispers. The universe had been speaking all along, He had only needed to notice. And somewhere, in the gentle transition between day and night, Birdperson let the quiet rhythm of signs and whispers carry him into a calm, reflective rest. Each echo, each shimmer, each tiny gesture reminded him that he was never truly alone, only walking with the subtle, patient heartbeat of the cosmos guiding him onward. The evening settled over the crystalline plains like a soft blanket, carrying a silver hush that made even the faintest rustle feel intimate. Birdperson lingered on a gentle rise, wings folded loosely, listening to the distant trickle of streams and the subtle hum of the world as it exhaled its own calm rhythm. He noticed that even in silence, connections pulsed, invisible threads tying one small moment to another. He could feel the faint presence of Morty somewhere nearby, a ripple of worry, curiosity, and hesitant courage drifting across the plains. It was a quiet resonance, not loud, not insistent, but persistent. Birdperson smiled softly, recognizing the pulse of a bond formed over countless shared journeys, one that didn't need constant words or gestures to exist. "Even when apart we leave traces," he murmured. "A presence lingers, a reminder of shared paths and quiet understanding." Tammy stepped beside him, brushing a hand along his arm. "It's like echoes of care," she said, her voice low and reverent. "We sense it, even without seeing it. The universe whispers through people, not just through signs or stars." Birdperson nodded, feeling a warmth spread through him. He understood that the quiet heroism of connection wasn't about grand acts. It was the patience to listen, the attention to notice, the gentleness to respond with care. Each small act of empathy, each subtle reflection of understanding became a soft thread in a greater tapestry, one woven not from force, but from presence and attention. A soft wind stirred, carrying faint scents of distant lands, of moments they had shared long ago. Birdperson closed his eyes and let the memories settle like a lullaby. Morty's uncertain courage, Rick's quiet, complicated care, hidden beneath impatience, Tammy's patience and quiet loyalty. He realized that the heart of a bond often beat quietly, almost imperceptibly, yet persistently enough to shape the world around it. They wandered slowly through groves where the moonlight pooled like liquid silver. Each step felt deliberate, each pause intentional. Birdperson began to notice subtle patterns, the tilt of a branch, the shimmer of a crystal, the way small creatures paused and acknowledged them. It was as if the world itself recognized the connections they nurtured, reflecting their care back in soft, tangible ways. He knelt beside a small pool, watching the reflection of stars ripple across the water. The surface trembled with quiet vibrations, echoes of distant laughter, soft whispers, gentle reminders that even brief moments could leave lasting impressions. Birdperson's mind wandered, tracing the invisible threads connecting him to others, seeing how each gesture of kindness, each act of patience, and each silent offering of understanding wove a delicate, unseen network. Tammy crouched beside him, her hand lightly brushing the water. "We're part of something bigger than ourselves," she said, almost to herself. "Even these tiny ripples reach far beyond what we can see." Birdperson nodded. Connections are quiet, persistent, patient. They don't demand attention. They exist whether we notice or not. But when we do notice, we understand the depth of our shared journey. A faint shimmer moved across the pool's surface, a small, glowing creature appearing briefly before darting away. Birdperson smiled gently. Even the smallest being, unnoticed by most, carried a quiet significance. He realized that noticing, truly noticing, was a form of care. It was acknowledgement, it was love in its simplest, purest form. As night deepened, The plains transformed into a subtle symphony of light and shadow. Birdperson felt an inner calm, a reflective warmth that settled around him like a soft cloak. He could sense Morty, Rick, and Tammy, all moving through their own journeys. Yet their presences intertwined with his in gentle, almost imperceptible ways. "Quiet connections," Birdperson whispered, wings folding more closely, "are the truest kind. They do not shout. They do not demand. They simply exist, persistent and patient, waiting to be noticed." Tammy rested her head lightly against his shoulder. "And when we notice," she said softly, "we honor them. We give meaning to the unseen threads that tie us together." Birdperson inhaled slowly, letting the cool night air fill him with serenity. He understood that connection, empathy, and care were subtle powers, soft, persistent forces that shape the world quietly without need for recognition. They were the uncelebrated heroism of existence, the gentle magic of noticing and being noticed. As the moons rose higher, casting their serene silver light over the plains, Birdperson let himself drift into the calm of shared presence. Every subtle gesture, every quiet echo of care, every unseen thread linking hearts became a lullaby of connection. It was a rhythm that guided him toward reflection, toward peace, toward a gentle understanding that even in quiet, unseen ways, bonds endure. And somewhere in the soft glow of night, Birdperson let the subtle threads of connection carry him into a serene, reflective rest. Each ripple, each whisper, each quiet resonance reminded him that even the gentlest gestures could echo across the vastness of the world, leaving a lasting, tender imprint. The sky stretched wide above them, vast and silent, a quiet ocean of stars drifting in gentle, unhurried motion. Birdperson perched on a small outcropping, wings partially open, letting the night's cool air brush against his feathers. Each star seemed to pulse softly, as though breathing, teaching a rhythm that moved slower than thought, slower than worry, a patience older than worlds. He could hear Morty's quiet steps on the path below, hesitant, careful, each one a small echo of courage. Even Rick's shadow moved among the rocks, a subtle presence that carried complexity without insistence. And Tammy lingered nearby, her gaze tracing constellations as if she were learning to read their language in silence. Birdperson felt a gentle warmth in this shared quiet. There was no rush here, no need for immediate understanding or dramatic gestures. The night itself taught the art of patience, showing that the smallest movements, the softest attentions, carried weight beyond their apparent simplicity. "Patience isn't waiting," he murmured, softly enough for only himself and the wind to hear. "It's understanding that things unfold in their own rhythm, in their own time. And in noticing, in witnessing, we honor that rhythm." Morty glanced up, noticing Birdperson's soft voice. I think I get that," he said hesitantly. "Like, when I rush I miss things, but when I slow down I see more." Birdperson nodded, feeling a calm pulse of satisfaction. "Yes, Morty, when we slow we see the threads connecting moments, the patterns hidden in stillness. Even the smallest gestures become meaningful when observed with care." Tammy shifted beside him, resting her hands on a smooth stone. "The stars seem patient," she whispered. "They don't hurry, they just shine, whether anyone notices or not." "Exactly," Birdperson replied, folding his wings more comfortably. "And we can be like that. We shine, we act, we care. Softly, persistently, even if no one sees, even if the world moves on, our quiet presence matters." A small breeze swept through the outcropping, carrying the scent of distant flowers and damp earth. Birdperson closed his eyes, letting the night's rhythm seep into him. Each inhale brought understanding. Each exhale released tension. Morty and Tammy followed the same slow rhythm, and even Rick, usually so restless, seemed momentarily still. Birdperson thought of all the moments he had witnessed, the tiny kindnesses and quiet acts that had gone unnoticed. He realized that patience and presence were intertwined. One could not exist without the other. In caring gently, in listening quietly, in simply being there, one shaped the world in soft, enduring ways. He glanced at Morty, seeing the boy's nervous excitement calm into gentle awareness. "Every choice," he said softly, "doesn't need to be monumental. Even small, patient actions create ripples that travel farther than we imagine." Tammy smiled faintly, feeling the truth in his words. "Like a star," she murmured. "It shines steadily even when the night is vast and empty. Its light still reaches others somehow." Birdperson spread his wings fully, letting the night air carry him upward in a slow, deliberate glide. The stars above mirrored his movements, glimmering in tandem with each motion. He felt the quiet magic of the world, a rhythm of patience, connection, and subtle guidance. As he returned to the outcropping, he landed softly, wings folding around him like a protective cloak. Morty and Tammy watched, sensing the calm certainty in every motion, the gentle assertion that patience itself could be a kind of wisdom. Birdperson exhaled slowly, feeling the serene weight of the night settle over him. "Patience is not absence of action," he whispered. "It is the presence of understanding, the gentle care that shapes hearts and minds, without demand, without urgency. It is quiet, yet it moves worlds." Above, stars shimmered in their slow, persistent dance, and Birdperson let himself sink into the rhythm of shared stillness. The night hummed softly with life, with unseen threads connecting one being to another. And in this gentle interweaving, the lesson was clear. The world doesn't need our hurry. It needs our attention, our presence, our care. He closed his eyes and let the soft glow of stars wash over him, feeling the quiet joy of being seen and being connected, even when only by the tender pulse of patience. And somewhere, out there, Morty and Tammy were learning the same soft truth, that stillness is strength, that patience is magic, and that every quiet moment matters. Morning arrived slowly, as if the world itself was stretching awake. Birdperson stepped lightly through a meadow where dew clung to the blades of grass like tiny, glimmering lanterns. Each droplet caught the early light and scattered it softly, a gentle reminder that even the smallest things could hold quiet beauty. Morty wandered nearby, his hands brushing over the tall grass, marveling at the subtle glimmer. He didn't speak much, but Birdperson could feel the boy's wonder in each careful movement. Even Rick, whose curiosity often leaped toward loud, complicated experiments, was quiet now, noticing the intricate patterns of nature that he usually overlooked. Birdperson paused beside a small, flowering bush. "Look closely," he said softly, "and you'll see that even the simplest things carry stories. Each petal, each leaf, each dew droplet has its own journey. And when we take the time to notice, we honor it." Tammy crouched down, examining the delicate flowers. "It's like the world is whispering," she said, "and we just have to listen." Birdperson nodded, feeling a warmth in his chest. He thought about all the moments they had rushed through before, missed sunsets, unnoticed patterns in the clouds, quiet laughter, buried under the weight of haste. Today, the pace was slow, deliberate, allowing each detail to reveal itself gently. A tiny insect crawled over a leaf, pausing to rest as if aware of their observation. Birdperson smiled. Even the smallest beings have their own rhythm, he murmured, and by noticing them, we connect with that rhythm, even for a moment. Morty's eyes widened as he watched the insect move. It's kind of amazing, isn't it? He whispered. All of this. It's alive, even if it's tiny. Yes, Birdperson said softly. Life doesn't only happen in grand gestures or spectacular events. It hums quietly in small things, in subtle details, in the unnoticed. Every small ripple matters. They walked slowly through the meadow, letting the sunlight warm their backs and the soft breeze carry the scents of wildflowers and earth. Birdperson noticed patterns forming, shadows that danced lightly across the ground, the way light fell through the leaves in gentle shapes, and the quiet symmetry in every living thing around them. Sometimes, Birdperson said, we overlook the miracles of ordinary moments because we think only the extraordinary matters. But these everyday wonders, these whispers of life, are the ones that teach us patience, presence, and care. Tammy's hand brushed a butterfly resting on a flower. Even noticing it makes it feel like magic, she said. Exactly, Birdperson murmured, smiling. Our attention, our presence, our quiet noticing. That is the magic. And it's not fleeting. It lingers like soft light in the corners of our minds. The three of them continued wandering, each step a meditation, each pause a gentle acknowledgement of life's subtleties. Birdperson realized that this attention, this quiet awareness, was a form of love, not dramatic or loud, but persistent, patient, and deeply transformative. As the morning unfolded, small marvels revealed themselves everywhere. The shimmer of a spiderweb, the rhythmic hum of distant insects, the playful dance of sunlight across the meadow. Birdperson breathed deeply, letting the serenity of the scene seep into his being. He glanced at Morty and Tammy, sensing their shared wonder, and felt the invisible threads of connection strengthen, not through words or deeds, but through the gentle act of noticing together. It was a quiet symphony, a whispering lullaby of life's ongoing subtle beauty. Birdperson sat down on a soft patch of moss, wings folded loosely around him, and let the morning warmth settle in. Even in the ordinary, he whispered, there is magic, there is connection, and there is quiet joy. And when we notice it, we become part of it, just as it becomes part of us. The world hummed softly around them, carrying the lesson of patience, presence, and reverence for the small wonders hidden in plain sight. Birdperson closed his eyes and let the gentle chorus of life wash over him, knowing that these whispers of everyday beauty were the quiet heartbeat of existence itself. And somewhere, in the hush of the meadow, they all felt the same simple truth. That noticing, truly noticing, was enough to bring calm, awe, and connection to hearts willing to see. The sun had settled into a gentle glow, casting soft amber light over the landscape. Birdperson perched on a low branch, letting the warmth seep into his feathers, while Morty and Tammy wandered slowly below, speaking in whispers that carried like wind through the trees. Nothing pressed upon them here. The world itself seemed to pause, giving them space to breathe, to notice, to simply be. Birdperson watched them, feeling a quiet gratitude stir within. The joy of companionship was subtle, not flashy, not demanding attention. It lived in shared silences, in small gestures, the tilt of a head, a gentle smile, the unspoken understanding that someone was present, and that presence alone mattered. "Do you ever think," Morty asked softly, "that maybe being together, even when nothing's happening, is enough?" Birdperson turned his gaze toward the boy, feathers ruffling slightly in the warm breeze. "Yes, Morty," he said, his voice a soft hum against the ambient sounds of the meadow. The greatest strength, the quietest power, is in being fully present for one another. Not in grand actions, but in shared attention, in the gentle acknowledgement of existence together. Tammy, sitting on a nearby stone, nodded slowly. Like, just noticing each other and knowing we're here? Exactly, Birdperson replied, folding his wings closer. It is in these quiet exchanges, these small attentions, that we weave the threads of connection. The world can move quickly, the chaos can roar around us, but here, now, the stillness carries meaning. Morty smiled faintly, leaning against the trunk of a tree. I like this. I never really thought about just being with someone without doing something crazy or dangerous. Birdperson allowed a soft, almost imperceptible smile. That is often the truest gift we can give each other, our presence, without expectation, without need. Simply witnessing, simply sharing the same space and time can be more meaningful than any grand adventure. The breeze whispered through the leaves, and for a moment the world seemed to hold its breath. Birdperson closed his eyes, savoring the shared quiet. Even Rick, who usually fidgeted or muttered to himself, leaned against a rock nearby, absorbed in his own contemplations, allowing the simple comfort of proximity to settle over him. Birdperson thought about the moments he had lived, the battles fought, the losses mourned, and the lessons learned. And he realized once again that the essence of life was not always in the extraordinary. Sometimes it was in the quiet joy of togetherness, in the gentle assurance that someone, somewhere, was aware of you, and that you were aware of them. Being here, like this, Birdperson said softly, reminds us that the world does not need to roar to be felt. Its quiet, persistent pulse carries just as much weight as any loud triumph. And we, in turn, carry each other in our attention, our care, and our presence. Morty and Tammy exchanged a glance, and a small, wordless understanding passed between them. It was not dramatic, it was not flashy, but it was steady, soft, and enduring. A quiet joy that rooted itself in their hearts. Birdperson stretched his wings gently, feeling the day's warmth sink into his feathers, and let out a slow breath. In the end, it is these moments, the calm, the shared silence, the gentle noticing of one another, that leave the deepest mark. That is where we find meaning, even when nothing extraordinary occurs. The afternoon light softened further, spilling gold across the meadow. And in that soft glow, the quiet fellowship of friends, of companions, of beings simply noticing one another, hummed with an unspoken magic. Birdperson closed his eyes, letting the serenity of the moment settle around him like a comforting blanket. The lesson was simple, yet profound. Presence is love, attention is care, and togetherness, even in silence, is a quiet, enduring wonder. And somewhere, Morty and Tammy felt it too, a soft truth that could be carried long after the sun had set and the stars whispered above. Evening arrived quietly, carrying a soft lavender hue across the sky. Birdperson sat perched on a rock at the edge of a still pond, its surface reflecting the fading light like a muted mirror. The air smelled of damp earth and distant flowers, the kind of scent that makes you pause and remember without even trying. Morty and Tammy approached slowly, their footsteps soft on the grass. Birdperson didn't turn immediately. He let the pond's reflection hold him for a moment, letting memories drift in like leaves carried by a gentle current. Each one was a small thing, a shared laugh, a fleeting glance, the warmth of a hand held briefly. Yet together they created a quiet weight that rested in his heart like a familiar blanket. "You're thinking about before, aren't you?" Morty asked softly, sitting beside him. Birdperson nodded, his gaze still fixed on the pond. "Memories are strange companions," he said. "They don't always speak loudly nor demand attention. They linger quietly, reminding us of who we were, what we felt, and who we became in the spaces between events." Tammy settled across from them, tucking her knees close. "Sometimes, I like the memories that don't make sense, the small ones that feel almost too simple to matter. Those are often the most powerful," Birdperson said, his voice gentle as the breeze. "A laugh shared under the stars, the warmth of sun on your back, the touch of a friend when words are too heavy. These small threads weave the tapestry of our lives more securely than any grand moment." Morty traced a line in the dirt with his finger. "It's like, even if bad stuff happened, the little good things are still there. They don't disappear." "Yes," Birdperson murmured, folding his wings around himself. "Even amidst sorrow or loss, these small wonders persist. They remind us that life, in all its quiet complexity, carries its own soft miracles. Remembering them allows us to rest, to feel safe, even when the world is not loud or kind." The pond shimmered as a gentle wind passed, stirring tiny ripples across the surface. Birdperson watched them and felt a gentle, reflective peace settle deeper within. Memories, he realized, were not burdens. They were gentle teachers. They offered guidance without pressure, comfort without demand, and a subtle sense of continuity that carried the soul forward. "Sometimes," Birdperson said, finally turning to look at Morty and Tammy, "the most courageous act is not to fight or run, but to sit with the past, to honor it, and to let it teach us without letting it weigh us down. That is the quiet strength we often overlook." Tammy's hand brushed a fallen leaf. "It feels safe," she whispered, "to just remember without needing to change anything." Birdperson smiled softly, a shadow of warmth in his eyes. "Exactly. Memories are a form of gentle companionship. They do not demand, they do not judge, they simply exist, offering a place to rest, a place to understand, a place to breathe." Morty leaned back on the grass, looking up at the deepening sky. "I think I like this. I like just sitting, thinking, remembering." Birdperson closed his eyes, letting the quiet weight of the evening, of shared presence, of gentle recollection, fill him. Life was not always about adventures or loud declarations. Sometimes the most profound moments were quiet, reflective, and deeply personal. Moments that hummed softly in the soul long after they passed. The stars began to appear, faint at first, then brighter as night fully descended. And in that gentle twilight, Birdperson felt the subtle comfort of memories, the warmth of friends, and the quiet joy of being alive in the soft rhythm of the world. He breathed in the evening air, letting it carry the gentle reassurance that even as time moved on, the small wonders of the past remained, guiding and comforting those willing to notice. And somewhere, Morty and Tammy felt it too, the soft, enduring presence of memory, love, and quiet understanding, a tender hum beneath the ordinary flow of life. The morning unfolded quietly, as though the world itself preferred to move at a gentle pace. Sunlight filtered through leaves, scattering golden patterns across the ground, soft and warm. Birdperson perched near the edge of a garden, watching Morty and Tammy move slowly through their morning routines. There was no rush, no urgency, only the calm cadence of small, deliberate actions. Birdperson observed the rhythm of their day, the way Morty carefully placed a cup of tea on the table, the way Tammy straightened a blanket before sitting down, the subtle gestures that carried care and intention without words. Each movement, ordinary in appearance, held a quiet significance. Life, Birdperson thought, was stitched together by these unnoticed threads. "There's something peaceful about this," Morty said, his voice low and thoughtful. "I used to think every day had to be full of crazy stuff to matter, but now I think it's the quiet days that count the most." Birdperson nodded, a soft hum in his throat. "Yes, the rhythm of everyday life is often overlooked, yet it shapes us more profoundly than moments of chaos or spectacle. It teaches patience, presence, and the subtle art of noticing beauty in simplicity." Tammy picked up a small flower that had fallen from a nearby bush. "Even little things," she said, turning it gently in her fingers, "can feel important, like they belong to the day." "Exactly," Birdperson replied. "It is in the repetition of small, caring acts that we discover resilience, empathy, and quiet strength. A smile, a meal shared, a gentle word. These are not trivial. They are the music underlying the symphony of our lives." The breeze carried a faint scent of dew and fresh earth, mingling with the warmth of sunlight. Birdperson closed his eyes briefly, savoring the ordinary, letting the quiet rhythm settle deep in his chest. The ordinary was not meaningless, it was life, alive in every careful gesture, every soft laugh, every moment of silent connection. Morty leaned against a railing, watching a bird hop along the path. "I think maybe this is how we keep going. Not with big adventures, but by noticing, by being here, by doing the little things over and over." Birdperson's eyes softened, filled with warmth. Yes, life does not demand grand gestures to be meaningful. The small acts of care, the gentle attention we give and receive, create the foundation upon which all else rests. And these rhythms, repeated with awareness, become a sanctuary for the heart. Tammy smiled faintly, like a soft, steady song. Birdperson allowed a slow, deep breath to pass through him, the gentle cadence of the day mirrored in the rise and fall of his chest. A song that plays even when we do not notice it, quietly guiding us through moments of doubt, fatigue, and worry. It is always there, waiting for us to pause, to listen, and to join in. As the sun climbed higher, bathing the garden in warmth, Birdperson felt a sense of reverent calm settle over him. Life was not always about dramatic turns or sudden revelations. Sometimes the greatest wisdom was in observing, in participating fully in the ordinary, in letting the rhythm of everyday life unfold without resistance. Morty and Tammy shared a glance, a soft understanding passing between them, as if they too had felt the quiet lesson woven into the morning. And Birdperson, watching them, knew that even the simplest days could carry a profound depth, a gentle pulse of meaning that lingered long after the sunlight faded. The day continued its unhurried march, filled with small gestures, soft smiles, and the gentle harmony of ordinary life. And in that rhythm, Birdperson found a quiet joy, a steady reminder that being present, truly present, was perhaps the most profound adventure of all. The evening settled like a soft blanket over the small clearing, painting the trees in muted shades of amber and violet. Birdperson sat near the center, feeling the gentle sway of the grass beneath him. Morty and Tammy were nearby, their laughter low and unhurried, like whispers carried by the wind. Birdperson watched them and thought about friendship, not the kind that demanded grand gestures or loud declarations, but the quiet, steadfast presence that holds through storms and sun alike. It was easy to overlook, easy to take for granted, yet it was often the most profound force in the world. "Sometimes," Morty said, tossing a small pebble into a shallow stream, "I feel like people think friendship has to be exciting, but really, it's just being there for each other." Birdperson nodded. Yes. True friendship is less about spectacle and more about constancy. It is the gentle understanding that someone will sit with you in silence or offer comfort without needing to explain. It is the quiet trust that allows hearts to rest in safety. Tammy traced patterns in the dirt with her fingers. I like that. It feels soft, like we don't have to perform or pretend. Birdperson's wings shifted slightly as he leaned back. Exactly. Friendship at its core is a safe harbor. It is not always marked by grand adventures or heroic deeds. It is measured in the subtle ways we notice each other, in the care that requires no reward, and in the empathy that flows without demand. The pond reflected the first stars of evening, each one like a gentle note in a soft lullaby. Birdperson felt the weight of quiet gratitude settle deep in his chest. Friendship had carried him through moments of doubt and solitude, through loss and uncertainty, and still it remained, a gentle, unspoken promise that he was not alone. Morty glanced at him, eyes thoughtful. I guess it's like having someone who sees you, really sees you, even when the world doesn't. Birdperson's gaze softened. Yes. And sometimes seeing someone else is enough. Sometimes simply being present, listening, and sharing space is the most extraordinary gift we can offer. It requires no power, no grand strategy, only attention and care. And yet its impact is enduring, even eternal in its subtlety. Tammy's voice was a quiet whisper. I like thinking about it like that. That even small moments, shared quietly, are important. Birdperson smiled softly. Every shared smile, every gesture of patience, every comforting word. These are the threads that bind hearts together. Friendship is not always loud or visible, but it is a foundation. It is a gentle strength that holds us steady, even when the world moves too quickly or becomes uncertain. The wind moved through the clearing, carrying with it a faint scent of flowers and earth. Birdperson closed his eyes, feeling the rhythm of connection, the steady pulse of trust and care that flowed between them. These quiet bonds, he knew, were among the most powerful forces in existence, a strength gentle enough to soothe the soul, yet enduring enough to shape a life. Morty leaned against a nearby tree, smiling faintly. I think I get it now. Friendship doesn't have to be complicated. It just is. Birdperson nodded, letting the quiet evening wrap around him. Yes, Morty, and in that simplicity lies its beauty, in the unspoken presence, in the shared quiet, in the gentle acceptance. We discover a kind of strength that no turmoil, no chaos can ever diminish. And in that moment, as stars shimmered softly above, Birdperson felt a calm certainty. Friendship, in its soft, enduring way, was the quiet heartbeat of life, a gentle rhythm that carried them through every shadow, every doubt, and every tender, unspoken understanding. The morning arrived softly with light spilling through the branches like spilled honey. Birdperson walked along the edge of a small forest pond, the gentle ripple of water the only sound breaking the stillness. Morty trailed behind, eyes wide with the kind of quiet wonder that only comes from being truly present. Everything feels alive here, Morty murmured, his voice almost a part of the breeze. Even the grass. Birdperson nodded, his gaze lingering on the reflection of clouds drifting lazily on the pond's surface. Nature teaches us patience, he said softly. It does not hurry, yet it accomplishes everything. Growth, change, and even healing occur in its own rhythm. There is wisdom in the stillness, if we pause to notice it. Tammy crouched near a patch of wildflowers, letting her fingers brush the petals without disturbing them. It's like they're gentle teachers, she said, They don't say anything, but you feel it. Birdperson smiled, a warm hum in his throat. Yes, every leaf, every ripple, every subtle shift carries a lesson. The wind, the water, the birds, all speak in whispers, and those who listen quietly find guidance that words often fail to convey. Life's truths are often hidden in softness, in patience, and in the subtle unfolding of time. Morty knelt by the pond, tossing tiny pebbles into the water, watching the ripples spread. So, paying attention is kind of like learning from everything? Exactly, Birdperson replied. Observation without hurry, without judgment, simply noticing the world around you, teaches empathy, mindfulness, and resilience. It reminds us that even in stillness, moves, and even in quiet, meaning thrives. The sunlight shifted, glinting off the pond like tiny sparks. Birdperson inhaled slowly, savouring the warmth and calm. And when we carry these lessons into our daily lives, he continued, we begin to see the extraordinary in the ordinary. We see that care, patience, and attentiveness are forms of quiet power, gentle yet unshakable. Tammy smiled faintly. I think I like that. Learning from little things, noticing small moments, it feels safe. Yes, Birdperson agreed. Safety and also freedom. In learning from nature, we learn to trust the unfolding of life. We begin to understand that not everything must be forced or rushed. Growth, understanding, and connection come in their own time, just as flowers bloom quietly, without announcement, and rivers carve valleys without complaint. Morty leaned back, eyes on the sky reflected in the water. I think I get it. It's like, even when things feel small or slow, they still matter. Everything matters if you pay attention. Birdperson's gaze softened. Yes, Morty. And in noticing, in quietly participating, we become part of something larger than ourselves. We learn that life's quiet rhythms, when embraced, bring clarity, calm, and gentle wisdom. There is no need to rush. There is no need to demand. Only presence, patience, and gentle care. As the day moved forward in its unhurried way, Birdperson felt a quiet gratitude for friendship, for small acts of care, for the whispering lessons of nature, and for the gentle pulse of life that continues, quietly yet persistently. In stillness, in observation, and in attentiveness, he discovered a deep, enduring sense of peace. And somewhere the pond reflected a world moving softly, reminding Birdperson that life's truest lessons often came not from grand gestures, but from the quiet, patient attention we give to the small, beautiful things around us. The evening stretched gently over the small clearing, soft shadows weaving between the trees. Birdperson sat quietly on a fallen log, his wings tucked close, watching the sky deepen into indigo. Memories drifted through him like slow-moving clouds, each one a delicate reminder of time, connection, and the gentle shape of life. Morty settled nearby, humming softly to himself, while Tammy traced circles in the dirt with a stick, her movements calm and deliberate. Birdperson spoke first, his voice low and contemplative. Memory is a quiet teacher. It reminds us not only of what we have lost, but of what we have carried with us, of what has shaped us in ways both small and profound. Morty looked up, curiosity softening his features. So, remembering isn't just about the past? No, Birdperson replied. It is also about understanding the present. When we reflect on our experiences, the gentle moments, the fleeting joys, the lessons hidden in sorrow, we gain perspective. We learn patience, empathy, and the subtle ways that love and care weave through our lives. Tammy nodded. I like that. It feels comforting, like you can carry it with you, quietly. Birdperson's gaze lifted to the first stars, faint and distant. Yes, and memory, when embraced gently, becomes a source of strength. It is not a weight to bear, but a soft foundation upon which we build understanding. Even the smallest acts, a kind word, a shared laugh, a quiet gesture, leave traces that endure far longer than we often realize. Morty ran his fingers through the soft moss beneath the log. I guess that's why it feels good to remember happy things. It's like they stay with you, even when the world feels confusing or heavy. Exactly, Birdperson said, wings shifting slightly with the motion of his breath. Memory holds the light in the darkness. It is a quiet sanctuary, reminding us that life is composed not only of challenges, but also of gentle, enduring moments of connection, and sometimes simply noticing these memories, allowing them to touch us softly, is enough to restore calm and hope. The wind moved through the clearing, carrying faint scents of pine and earth. Birdperson inhaled slowly, letting the gentle rhythm of memory and presence merge into a serene clarity. And when we share our memories, he continued, we gift others with glimpses of our inner world. We build bridges of understanding, trust, and care. In this way, reflection is not solitary. It is a quiet act of communion. Tammy smiled faintly, looking at the stars. I like that even thinking quietly can connect you to others. Birdperson's eyes softened. Yes, the heart remembers, and in remembering, it learns. It carries not only lessons but also gratitude for friendship, for life, and for the soft, enduring moments that remind us we are never truly alone. As night deepened, the clearing was bathed in the tender glow of starlight. Birdperson felt the calm certainty that memory, like friendship and nature, was a gentle thread running through life, holding them together, guiding them, and offering solace in the quiet, unhurried way that only true reflection can. And in that stillness, he knew that even as the world shifted and changed, the soft power of memory would always be there, a quiet companion in every heartbeat, every whisper, and every gentle breath. The morning sun filtered softly through the mist that hung over the hills. Birdperson walked slowly along a quiet path, each step deliberate, the soft crunch of leaves beneath his feet, the only sound in the stillness. Morty followed, his hands tucked into his pockets, while Tammy drifted beside them, her eyes reflecting the pale gold of the day. Birdperson paused near a small stream, watching the water glide over smooth stones. Sometimes, he began, his voice calm and even, the hardest lesson is learning when to let go. Letting go is not forgetting, nor is it giving up. It is a quiet acknowledgement that some things, however cherished, cannot remain in our grasp. Morty crouched by the stream, letting his fingers trail in the flowing water. Like memories? He asked. Yes, Birdperson said, and like moments, feelings, even people. Life moves in its own rhythm, and clinging too tightly can cause pain. But letting go with care, with understanding, can bring peace instead of sorrow. It is an act of respect for the past, for others, and for ourselves. Tammy smiled softly. I think I understand. It's like when you hold something too tight, it loses its beauty. But when you let it float gently, it stays in your heart. Birdperson's gaze followed a leaf drifting on the water's surface. Exactly. The leaf does not resist the current, it moves gracefully with it. In the same way, when we release our grip, we allow life to flow naturally. We find freedom and even joy in the quiet surrender of control. Morty watched the leaf glide downstream, a small smile forming on his lips. It feels Lighter somehow, just thinking about it. Birdperson nodded, wings folding closer to his sides. Yes, letting go teaches patience, humility, and trust. Trust in life, trust in change, and trust in the enduring connections that remain even when circumstances shift. It reminds us that some things are not ours to hold, but that they still shape us, guide us, and stay with us in invisible ways. The stream's gentle babble seemed to echo his words, a soft, continuous reminder of life's quiet flow. And sometimes, Birdperson continued, letting go allows space for new growth, new friendships, new understanding, new quiet moments that would not have been possible if we had clung too tightly to what has passed. Tammy reached out, touching Morty's arm gently. "It's kind of like making room in your heart for what really matters," she said. Birdperson gave a soft, approving hum. Yes, letting go is not loss, but a careful honoring of life's impermanence. It allows us to move forward with gentleness, with gratitude, and with a deeper appreciation for what remains. In this way, every ending is also a beginning, soft and unhurried. As the sun rose higher, spilling warmth over the hills, Birdperson felt the quiet certainty of release. Each step along the path, each glance at the flowing stream, reminded him that life's beauty often lies in what we learn to let go of, and in the quiet peace that follows. And somewhere, gently carried by the wind, he felt the truth of it, that in surrendering, in releasing, there is a profound softness, a slow unfolding of calm, and a gentle, enduring joy. The sun had dipped low, painting the sky in soft shades of rose and lavender. Birdperson perched on a gentle hilltop, wings relaxed, watching the horizon melt into night. Morty and Tammy sat nearby, their faces calm, eyes reflecting the fading light. A quiet hush had settled over the world, the kind that feels like the breath between one thought and the next. Birdperson spoke slowly, softly, as though sharing a secret with the universe itself. "Legacy," he said, "is not measured in grand gestures or loud declarations. It is found in the subtle echoes of our lives, the small acts of kindness, the whispers of encouragement, the care we leave behind for others to find." Morty tilted his head, listening. "So, it's like the little things that stay with people, even if you're not around." "Yes," Birdperson said, a gentle smile touching his beak. "Even the quietest presence leaves its mark. A smile offered when it was needed, a moment of understanding, a shared laugh. These are the treasures we leave behind. They do not fade because they become part of the hearts of those we touch." Tammy traced a pattern in the grass with her fingers. "It makes me think that everything we do matters, even if it seems small." Birdperson nodded. "Everything matters, and sometimes it is in the smallest gestures that our truest selves are revealed. Legacy is not a monument to our presence, but a collection of gentle traces held softly in the memories of those who experience them." The wind carried the distant scent of pine and earth, and Birdperson felt it as if the world itself were breathing alongside them. "And when we reflect on our lives," he continued, "we realize that what we leave behind is love. Love in its quietest, most enduring form. Not loud or boastful, but steady, patient, and unending." Morty leaned back on the hill, looking at the stars beginning to emerge. "I think I'd like to leave that kind of legacy. Something soft, but that matters." Birdperson's gaze lingered on the sky. "We can all do that. By living with care, by offering kindness, and by listening with presence, we leave footprints that last far beyond our own time. Legacy is not something to chase. It is a natural result of living thoughtfully, tenderly, and fully." Tammy whispered, "It feels peaceful thinking about it that way, like even when things end, something still continues. Yes, Birdperson said, wings folding closer. Life is a river of moments, flowing through each of us, shaping those who follow, and returning in ways we may never see. And so we rest in the knowledge that our gentle actions, our quiet care, ripple outward, carrying warmth and light. As night fully embraced the hilltop, Birdperson breathed in deeply, a soft exhale escaping with the wind. The stars twinkled faintly above, silent witnesses to the quiet work of love and memory. And in that peaceful darkness, he felt the enduring truth that every gentle gesture, every small act of kindness, every whispered word of understanding is a legacy that will never fade. Night had settled softly over the land, wrapping everything in a gentle darkness that felt like a lullaby. Birdperson stood at the edge of a quiet meadow, the grass glistening faintly under the pale light of a crescent moon. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of pine and earth, a subtle perfume that seemed to breathe along with the world itself. Somewhere in the distance, a small stream murmured, its voice a soft accompaniment to the quiet thoughts drifting through his mind. He turned slowly, observing Morty and Tammy as they followed behind him, their steps light, almost hesitant. There was no rush, no need to hurry. Tonight, there was only this: the slow unfolding of time, the soft rhythm of breath, and the gentle companionship of those who mattered. Birdperson's gaze lingered on their faces, seeing the way the moonlight kissed their skin, the way their eyes held a mixture of curiosity, comfort, and quiet reverence. "Do you ever wonder," Birdperson began, his voice a calm, soft vibration in the night, "how the smallest moments sometimes hold the most weight?" Morty looked up, his head tilted, eyes reflecting the dim light. "Like, are the little things that happen and you don't even notice at first?" "Yes," Birdperson replied. "A hand held when fear arises, a quiet word spoken in understanding, a pause taken to simply be present. These are the moments that ripple through our lives, shaping us in ways that grand gestures rarely can. It is in these subtle movements that we leave our mark, unseen yet enduring." Tammy stepped closer, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "It feels comforting thinking that we don't have to do big things to matter." Birdperson nodded, wings folding lightly against his back. "Exactly. To matter is not to dominate or to conquer. To matter is to care, to listen, to offer warmth and presence. The universe does not measure us by the noise we make, but by the quiet ways we leave traces in the hearts of others." They walked together slowly along a winding path, the soft hum of the night around them. Crickets whispered in the underbrush, and the wind stirred the branches above, producing a gentle symphony that seemed designed for reflection. Birdperson inhaled deeply, savoring the rhythm of the world's quiet song. "There is a beauty in endings," he continued, "not in the sense of finality, but in the completeness of a life lived with thoughtfulness and care. Each ending, each farewell, is an opportunity to see clearly what has been nurtured, what has been loved, and what continues, even when we are no longer present." Morty's fingers traced patterns in the soft soil beneath his feet. I understand. It's like, even if something is gone, the way it touched us stays." "Exactly," Birdperson said, a faint smile warming his expression. "The imprint of love, of connection, of care, lingers. It becomes a quiet companion, guiding us in unseen ways, giving strength, offering comfort, and reminding us that nothing truly ends as long as it is remembered." They reached a small clearing where the stars opened fully above, scattered like 1,000 tiny lanterns suspended in the infinite dark. Birdperson paused, turning his gaze upward. "Look at the sky," he said softly. See how each light shines, steady and patient, even across unimaginable distances. Our lives, too, can be like these stars. Though unseen at times, they illuminate paths, warm hearts, and offer guidance quietly, consistently, without demanding recognition. Tammy reached out, taking Morty's hand, and together they watched the celestial canopy, the cool night air wrapping them in a calm embrace. "It feels peaceful," she murmured. "Like everything is okay, even when it's not." Birdperson's eyes softened as he observed them. Peace is not the absence of difficulty, but the acceptance of life's natural flow. Peace is found in awareness, in understanding, in the gentle holding of moments as they pass. And in this awareness we discover a quiet joy that nothing can disturb. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of distant flowers and the subtle warmth of the earth itself. Birdperson closed his eyes for a moment, listening to the whispers of the night. Each sound, each movement seemed to speak directly to his spirit, reminding him that life's most profound truths are often expressed in silence. "We often search for meaning in loud, spectacular events," he said, opening his eyes to the moonlit meadow. "But meaning is rarely loud. It is found in the soft connections, the small acts of care, the whispers that float between one heart and another. And it is here, in this quiet, that the soul finds its deepest rest." Morty let out a small, contented sigh. "I think I'm starting to see that the little things matter more than I realized. That, even if I don't notice them right away, they build up like layers of warmth in a blanket." Birdperson's beak curved in a gentle, approving smile. "Yes, Morty. And when the layers gather, they form a quiet fortress of peace, resilience, and love. These are the things that endure far longer than the loud, fleeting moments of life. They are the threads that hold us together when storms come, the gentle comfort that allows sleep to come easily and dreams to be sweet." The night deepened, and the stars grew brighter, painting the sky with a serene brilliance. Birdperson spread his wings slightly, feeling the cool air brush against the feathers. "And in the end," he whispered, "we realize that life is not about holding on too tightly, nor about leaving too hastily. It is about moving gently, caring deeply, and resting when the world invites us to pause." Morty and Tammy leaned closer to him, and for a long while they simply watched the night unfold, allowing the quiet to settle around them like a soft, protective blanket. The moonlight shimmered on the grass, the gentle stream whispered in the distance, and the stars continued their steady vigil. Birdperson breathed in, a slow, deep exhale leaving his chest. And somewhere, in this very moment, all the small things we have done, the kindness, the listening, the presence, echo quietly in the world. They ripple outward, unseen yet undiminished, carrying warmth and light into places we may never visit, touching hearts in ways we cannot measure. "And that," he said softly, "is enough, always enough." As the wind whispered through the meadow, as the stars blinked silently above, and as Morty and Tammy rested beside him, Birdperson felt the gentle comfort of a life embraced fully, thoughtfully, and with love. He looked once more at the sky and murmured, almost to himself, "And with that, I stretch into the stars." The meadow was quiet now, wrapped in the deep embrace of night. Birdperson stood at its center, wings gently folded, eyes reflecting the silver light of a rising moon. The stars stretched across the sky in calm constellations, each one like a tiny whisper of memory, a faint echo of countless moments lived and shared. The night carried a soft hush, the kind that feels like the gentle exhale after a long day, a pause between one heartbeat and the next. Morty and Tammy lingered nearby, their shadows long on the grass, and Birdperson watched them with a warmth that filled the cool night air. "Do you remember," he began softly, "the very first time we looked at the stars together?" Morty smiled faintly. "Yeah, I think I was scared. Everything felt so enormous." "And now?" Birdperson asked. "Now it feels peaceful, like we belong to it even a little." Birdperson nodded, a slow, thoughtful movement. "Peace comes when we understand that the world does not demand we be anything but ourselves. It comes when we offer kindness, listen deeply, and trust that the quiet gestures, however small, carry more meaning than we realize. And it comes when we rest in the knowledge that love, in its purest form, leaves a gentle trace that never fades." Tammy reached out, brushing a leaf from the ground. "I think I've started to notice those traces in people, in memories, even in ourselves." "Yes," Birdperson said, voice low and tender. "They are all around us. Sometimes we see them clearly, sometimes only in moments of reflection, like this one. But they exist always, quietly, guiding, shaping, comforting." The three of them walked slowly toward the small hill at the edge of the meadow. Each step was deliberate, unhurried, a rhythm that matched the calm pulse of the night. Birdperson's wings brushed the air softly, creating a sound almost like a lullaby carried on the wind. "There is a kind of beauty in endings," he said as they reached the hilltop. "Not because they are final, but because they allow us to see the threads we've woven, the moments of care, laughter, understanding, and love. And when we see them, we recognize that nothing is truly lost. The love remains. The echoes remain. The gentle marks we leave in the hearts of others endure." Morty sat down on the soft grass, legs crossed, watching the moonlight shimmer on the tips of the tall grasses. "It's comforting," he said slowly. "Like even when something ends, it's not really gone. It's still there, somewhere." "Exactly," Birdperson said, settling beside him. "Even when we part from people, even when we leave places, even when the world changes around us, the care we have given, the love we have shared, and the moments we have truly been present, these are never gone. They are the lasting light we carry with us and the light we leave behind." Tammy leaned against Birdperson's side, a faint smile on her lips. "I feel safer knowing that. Like everything we do has weight, but in a gentle, comforting way." Birdperson tilted his head toward the sky. "It is this gentle weight, the quiet presence, the soft touch of love and attention that builds the truest legacy. We do not need monuments or loud celebrations. We only need to live thoughtfully, act with care, and offer ourselves fully in small, meaningful ways." The night deepened further, the stars now scattered like whispered promises across the infinite darkness. A soft breeze moved through the meadow, carrying with it the faint scent of blossoms and earth. Birdperson inhaled slowly, feeling the world settle around him like a warm, familiar blanket. "And so," he said, voice low and reverent, "we rest in the knowledge that life, in all its quiet moments, has meaning. That love, even when unseen, endures. That our presence, when given with care, leaves ripples far beyond what we can imagine. And that endings are not to be feared, for they are simply another kind of beginning, one that invites reflection, remembrance, and peace." Morty and Tammy sat in silence, the words settling softly in their hearts. Each star above them seemed to pulse gently, as though agreeing, affirming the quiet truths of the night. Birdperson stretched his wings once, slowly, deliberately, letting the movement carry the weight of his thoughts, his memories, and his care. And somewhere, he whispered, almost to himself. Every act of love, every moment of understanding, every quiet gesture of presence continues onward. It touches lives, inspires hearts, and creates a warmth that never fades. And that, my friends, that is enough. The night wind whispered through the trees, the grasses rustled softly, and the stars continued their silent vigil. Birdperson closed his eyes for a long moment, letting the tranquility wash over him. There was no urgency, no need for action, only the gentle, timeless rhythm of existence and the comfort of knowing that love and care were never lost. As Morty and Tammy watched him, they felt a profound stillness, a reassurance that even in the quietest corners of life, meaning persists. Birdperson opened his eyes once more, gazing upward with a serene smile. And with that, he said softly, I stretch into the stars. The trio remained together for a while longer, letting the calm of the evening settle around them. No words were needed. The meadow, the moon, the stars, and the gentle night all spoke the language of peace and understanding, reminding them that life, in its quietest moments, was filled with enduring beauty. The night was deep and still, the kind of night that feels like it has been waiting patiently for you all day. Birdperson sat atop the gentle rise of the hill, wings relaxed but attentive, eyes tracing the delicate curve of constellations he had loved for so long. Morty and Tammy lingered nearby, their breaths slow, synchronized with the gentle sway of the tall grass. The world around them felt suspended, balanced between memory and dream, a quiet, suspended space where time did not rush but lingered thoughtfully. Do you ever wonder, Morty said softly, if the stars remember us? Birdperson considered this, tilting his head slightly. Perhaps, he said in his gentle, measured voice, they remember not who we are in grand terms, but the way we touched the lives around us. The quiet kindness, the small gestures of care, the laughter shared in fleeting moments. These things are like echoes. Even the stars might sense them if they had the patience to listen. Tammy shifted closer, letting her fingers brush against Morty's. It feels comforting, she murmured, like we leave behind soft traces even if no one is watching. Yes, Birdperson whispered. And sometimes the soft traces are the ones that matter most. They endure quietly, gently, shaping the world, touching lives long after we have moved on. A whisper of encouragement, a glance full of understanding, a simple act of presence. These are the constellations we truly leave behind. The three of them sat in silence, letting the words settle. The night carried a gentle hum, as though the world itself was breathing with them, joining in the quiet contemplation. Birdperson stretched his wings slightly, and the soft motion seemed to harmonize with the rhythm of the universe, subtle and unhurried. Birdperson, Morty said, hesitant, do you ever feel like it's time to move on? Not just tomorrow or next week, but in a bigger way? Birdperson's gaze did not leave the sky. Moving on does not mean forgetting. It does not mean leaving behind what is valuable. It is simply another way of being present, one that acknowledges the cycles of life and the quiet evolution of the heart. Change can be gentle, change can be soft, and when we embrace it, it allows space for growth, reflection, and understanding. Tammy's eyes shimmered faintly in the moonlight. I think I'm starting to understand. It's not the endings that matter most. It's the traces we leave and the moments we hold with others. Birdperson nodded, a slow, serene motion. Yes, and it is in these moments, the small, tender, unassuming ones, that life finds its deepest meaning. A comforting presence, a whispered encouragement, a shared silence under the night sky. These are the things that endure, these are the things that ripple quietly outward, touching hearts we may never see. Morty exhaled slowly. I think I want to be better at noticing those things before it's too late. Noticing, Birdperson said softly, is the first step. And then comes the gentle act of being present, of offering care without expectation, of letting love be a quiet companion rather than a loud demand. These are the gifts we can give freely, and they are remembered even when no one speaks of them. The night deepened further, wrapping them in a soft cocoon of stars and shadow. Birdperson's wings lifted just slightly as though to embrace the sky itself, then folded again, resting comfortably against him. The wind moved through the meadow like a soft lullaby, carrying with it scents of earth and blossom, familiar and grounding. And when the time comes, Birdperson whispered, to leave a place or a moment, we can do so with grace. Not with fear, not with regret, but with a quiet recognition that what we have given and what we have shared continues onward. Every kindness, every act of understanding, every silent gesture of love, it lives beyond us, lingering in the hearts of others. Tammy rested her head against Birdperson's side. It's peaceful, knowing that. Like, even if we're not together, the care stays, it stays. Yes, Birdperson murmured, and that is enough. Enough to carry us gently through the nights, enough to give our hearts courage, enough to remind us that love is the true measure of presence. And sometimes that is all we need. Morty looked up at the sky, feeling the weight of the quiet wisdom settle in his chest. I never really thought about it like that. About leaving traces, not footprints. About quiet acts being stronger than big gestures. Birdperson smiled softly, a warmth in his eyes. It is the quiet acts that endure. They ask for nothing. They ask only to be given freely, sincerely, and without hurry. And in the rhythm of night, in the gentle passage of time, they become the stories the stars remember, the memories that comfort, the moments that define us. The moon rose higher, casting silver light across the meadow. Each star shimmered faintly, like a note in a lullaby carried across eternity. Birdperson closed his eyes briefly, breathing in the calm night air. And so, he whispered, we rest, we reflect, and we trust that the love we share carries us onward, that it is enough, that it endures, that it is, in the quietest and most tender ways, eternal. Morty and Tammy sat with him, enveloped in the hush of the night, their hearts lighter, their spirits calm. The world, vast and infinite above them, felt intimate, reassuring, and safe. Birdperson opened his eyes once more, gazing at his companions. And somewhere, he said softly, all acts of care, all moments of gentle presence continue onward. They ripple, they touch, they endure. And that is the quiet magic of being alive, the way we leave our soft, invisible mark on the world and on each other. He stretched his wings once, slowly, deliberately, as if painting a final, silent brushstroke across the night sky. The motion was peaceful, a soft exhale of thought and love, a gentle acknowledgement of everything shared. And with that, he whispered, I fold into the stars and let the night carry me forward. The meadow hummed with the subtle rhythm of life, a lullaby of leaves, grass, and distant whispers. Morty and Tammy stayed still, letting the world breathe around them, feeling the lasting presence of Birdperson's quiet guidance and care. The dawn arrived slowly, like a soft thought brushing across the sky. The horizon was painted in muted golds and tender lavenders, colors that seemed almost afraid to wake too abruptly. Morty, Tammy, and even Birdperson lingered in that quiet space between night and day, where dreams still whispered and the world had not yet demanded attention. Morty stretched lazily, feeling the gentle pull of sleep still clinging to his eyelids. "It's peaceful," he murmured, almost to himself. "Like the morning isn't in a hurry either." Birdperson nodded, his feathers catching the soft light. "Peace," he said softly, "is not the absence of motion, but the presence of gentle attention. Even when life stirs around us, we can carry a calm within. It is quiet, steady, enduring, like a small lantern against the wind." Tammy took a deep breath, letting it flow slowly through her chest. "I never thought mornings could feel this soft, like the world is breathing with us, not against us." "Yes," Birdperson whispered. "Every moment has its own rhythm. Some moments demand loudness and action. Some moments like these ask only for gentle presence. And it is in listening to these rhythms that we truly understand ourselves and each other." Morty glanced toward the horizon, watching a bird cut a line across the pale sky. "Do you think the things we did matter?" His voice was small, fragile, as if the question itself might shatter the quiet around them. Birdperson regarded him with warm, knowing eyes. "Morty," he said gently, "matter is not always measured in grand gestures. It is measured in ripples, the soft echoes that follow kindness, patience, and love. The way someone's hand reaches out in a moment of uncertainty. The way someone listens without needing to speak. The way hearts remain open even when the world is heavy. These are the things that endure." Tammy's fingers intertwined with Morty's, a subtle reassurance. "So, even the smallest acts count, even if it doesn't feel like it?" Birdperson smiled faintly. "Even then, especially then, sometimes the world only notices the softest echoes when everything else is still. It is the quietest things that become the lasting stories, the hidden legacies that carry hope." A gentle wind stirred, carrying with it the faint scent of earth and dew. Morty inhaled, letting the calm wash over him. "I think I understand," he said slowly. "It's like leaving traces. Not loud marks or signs, just soft, quiet things that stay behind." "Exactly," Birdperson replied, his voice a comforting whisper. "And those traces are everywhere. In the smiles we shared, the hands we held, the care we offered without expectation. They ripple outward, far beyond what we can see, far beyond what we can know. And in this there is a kind of quiet magic, a gentle persistence of love and attention that outlives even our own awareness." Tammy leaned back against the soft grass, eyes half closed, savoring the warmth of the early sun. "I like that," she murmured. "I like that the quiet things matter, that it's enough." Birdperson nodded. "It is always enough. Even when we are uncertain, even when we falter, even when the world seems loud and demanding, the quiet traces endure. They are a gift. They are a memory. They are the light that continues to glow when we have moved on." Morty thought about all the small moments, the soft encouragements, the times he had listened instead of reacting, the moments he had chosen care over chaos. They felt more important now. "I guess that's what you mean by gentle heroism, huh?" Birdperson's eyes crinkled slightly with warmth. "Yes, Morty. Heroism need not roar. It may whisper, it may nurture, it may simply exist as steady attention to what is true, what is kind, and what endures. That is often more powerful than any grand gesture or loud proclamation." The sky brightened gradually, the gold deepening, touching everything with a soft, golden haze. The air was warm now, a gentle embrace, a lullaby of light and life. Morty and Tammy breathed slowly, letting each exhale carry away remnants of tension, of worry, of unspoken fears. Birdperson stretched his wings fully this time, letting the morning air flow through each feather. "And so," he whispered, "we move through life, carrying our traces, our quiet acts of love, our gentle persistence. We may never see their full reach, but that does not diminish their value. They are real, they are lasting, and they are enough." Morty smiled softly, looking at the faint glimmer of dew on the grass. "I want to remember that," he said. "Even when things feel hard, even when everything feels too much, the little things, the quiet things, they matter." "Indeed," Birdperson murmured. "They matter more than we realize. They are the unspoken stories that cradle hearts, the invisible threads that bind us across time and space, the whispers that linger in the stars." The three of them remained in the meadow a while longer, letting the world wake around them without disturbing the fragile calm within. Birdperson's presence was a constant reassurance, a soft anchor in the vastness of existence. Morty and Tammy felt the gentle echo of all that had come before them, and the comfort of knowing that even after today, even after tomorrow, the traces of love and care would persist. And as the sun rose fully, spilling warmth, across the meadow Birdperson whispered one last soft thought, and somewhere all the quiet acts, all the gentle presences, all the small ripples of care continue onward. They echo in ways we may never know. And that is enough. That is more than enough. The wind moved through the grass like a lullaby. The birds added their soft notes, and the world felt at once vast and intimate, infinite and tender. Morty and Tammy held hands, hearts quiet, spirits soothed, their souls tracing the gentle ripples Birdperson had taught them to notice. Night draped itself across the sky like a gentle blanket, folding the world in quiet shadows and soft whispers. The meadow where Morty, Tammy, and Birdperson had spent so many mornings now slept under the hush of evening, the air holding that tender pause between day and night, between dreaming and wakefulness. Morty lay on the soft grass, eyes half closed, tracing the shapes of clouds that moved lazily above. "It's almost like the sky is humming," he whispered. "Like it knows all the things we didn't even say." Birdperson, sitting nearby, tilted his head toward the constellations beginning to twinkle. "The sky remembers," he said softly. "Every thought, every act, every gentle ripple of care, it lingers, and the stars are patient listeners. They do not judge, nor hurry, nor demand. They simply shine, and in shining they carry the quiet echoes of all who have lived with attention and love." Tammy rolled onto her side, watching the faint glimmer of the first star. "I never imagined that quiet could be so vast, like it stretches forever, even beyond us." "Yes," Birdperson replied, "quiet is not emptiness. It is presence. It is love in motion, too subtle to be loud, yet too enduring to be lost. And every being leaves traces, some seen, some hidden, some carried, in the very light of the stars. And in that we are immortal, even when we are gone." Morty let out a soft breath, feeling his thoughts settle like sand. I understand why you always said the little things matter, even the smiles, the listening, the tiny acts that seem invisible. They echo in ways we don't see." Birdperson nodded, his eyes reflecting the starlight. "Exactly, Morty. And that is the beauty of gentle presence. It is not measured in applause or recognition. It is measured in the lasting calm it leaves behind, the comfort it provides, the warmth it shares, and the love it fosters without expectation. Quiet heroism is subtle, but it is enduring. It is powerful, not in force, but in persistence. Tammy reached for Morty's hand again, and he squeezed hers back, their fingers entwined as if holding the day itself. "I want to carry that with me," she whispered. "Even when things are chaotic, even when everything feels like it's spinning out of control. I want to remember the quiet, the small acts." "And you will," Birdperson assured them. "Those memories, those ripples are yours now. They will grow with you, accompany you, and offer solace when the world feels heavy. And they are never lost, for they live in the hearts they touched, in the warmth they left behind, and in the constellations above." The three of them settled deeper into the grass, letting the night enfold them. A soft wind rustled through the trees, carrying with it the faint scent of earth, dew, and distant flowers. Morty closed his eyes fully, listening to the whispers, the sighs, the gentle cadence of the world. Each sound became a note in a lullaby, each pause a moment to breathe, each shadow a tender reminder of the quiet presence surrounding them. Birdperson's voice, low and steady, wove through the night. "And so we rest, not in absence, but in reflection. We honor the days we have lived, the choices we have made, the love we have shared. And in this rest we find understanding, peace, and a gentle reassurance that life, in all its chaos and stillness, is enough, always enough." Morty felt the weight of the day melt away, replaced by a soft warmth in his chest. "I never thought I'd feel this calm, like everything I've worried about, everything I've stumbled through. It's part of something bigger, something quiet but important." Birdperson stretched his wings slowly, the movement elegant and unhurried, each feather catching the faint starlight. "Morty, Tammy, remember this. Life is not always about grand achievements or visible triumphs. Often it is about the tender, invisible moments, the smiles shared without words, the hands held when fear is near, the patience that nurtures growth, the love that persists quietly. These are the true stars of our story." Tammy let herself drift, her thoughts soft and meandering, like clouds carried by a gentle breeze. "I feel, safe," she murmured. "Not because nothing is happening, but because I know that the small things matter. That love is always here, even if it isn't loud." "Yes," Birdperson said softly. "And now as the night embraces you, know that every quiet act, every gentle choice, every ripple of care, they continue onward. They echo beyond our sight, beyond our understanding, but they are never gone. They are the threads that weave the world together, invisible yet unbreakable." Morty tilted his head, looking at the faint glimmer of countless stars, feeling the pull of sleep and wonder simultaneously. "It's beautiful," he whispered. "The quiet, the echoes, the stars." Birdperson lowered his voice to almost a whisper, like the final note of a lullaby. "And somewhere, each of us carries our own quiet light. It may flicker softly, it may shine steadily, but it is enough. It is always enough, and it touches more than we will ever know." The meadow, the night, the stars, all seemed to breathe in harmony with them. Morty felt the warmth of friendship, the steady pulse of care, the gentle imprint of love. And as his eyelids drifted closed, he carried with him the knowledge that quiet heroism, soft attention, and tender acts of kindness would always echo, long after the voices faded, long after the night passed. And Birdperson, settling beside them, whispered one last thought to the wind, to the stars, to the hearts of anyone listening. And somewhere, he's still out there, napping in the sun, tracing the echoes of all the gentle acts left behind. The world exhaled in unison with them, a soft, infinite sigh, The meadow, the night, the hearts resting within it, all were held, all were known, all were loved,